Damon Hill was the last to triumph 12 years ago. Now 50 years to the day after Mike Hawthorne became the first British world champion, Lewis Hamilton has another chance to secure the sport's greatest prize.
Hamilton comes out of the final corner, goes across the line at 1:36.3. What's Massa going to end up with as a grid stop? Massa makes row 2. Lewis Hamilton has stuck it on pole position. He has a chance to clinch the World Championship, but he needs to stay calm.
So welcome to the Shanghai International Circuit. It's warm, it's sultry, it's dry at the moment, but there certainly feels like the possibility of rain for this absolutely vital Chinese Grand Prix. Just as a year ago, it's the penultimate round of the Formula One World Championship, and just as a year ago, it's a race that gives Lewis Hamilton the chance to clinch the Formula One driver's title. A year ago, his lead was 17 points. It looked odds-on, but still the title slipped away. This year, his lead is just 5 points. It looks a lot tougher, but he could still clinch it today. Because if Lewis can win this race from pole position, and Felipe Massa finishes no better than 5th, then we're celebrating. If Lewis gets 2nd or 3rd, it's still possible. Depending where Massa finishes, Kubica can also still win the title, but he starts 11th after qualifying problems yesterday. If Lewis can win it here today, it avoids the agony of a showdown at Massa's home circuit in Brazil. He's on pole, Mark, but the Ferraris have really got him surrounded. It's going to be so tough for Lewis Hamilton this afternoon.
That's going to be a very difficult day for Lewis in the office. I mean, he's got Ferraris around him. He's got Alonso and a Renault not far behind as well. His teammates a little bit further down than what he wanted, so not easy.
Yeah, his nearest potential ally, Heikki Kovalainen, way back in 5th, is not going to be of great assistance. What about this weather? What are you feeling about the possibility of rain?
Well, talking to a lot of people in the paddock in the last 10-15 minutes, everybody keeps saying now that there's a possibility of showers coming in, maybe towards the end of the race, but that possibility is very real.
And that could definitely help Lewis.
I think it would help Lewis in the main, because I think in the wet conditions, the McLaren and Lewis Hamilton are very strong, but before that turns up, he's got a lot of work to do.
Well, no apologies at all for Lewis Hamilton, absolutely dominating our race build-up today. He's a British driver on the brink of becoming the first British world champion in some 12 years. He's on pole position, and apart from that, he's got us all very nervous after a far from perfect performance in Japan last weekend.
Hamilton on the right, Raikkonen on the left. Here comes Kovalainen on the attack, and immediately Raikkonen takes the lead. Kovalainen does a great job defending for Hamilton, who locks his brakes. He's pretty rude with Raikkonen there. The two Ferraris almost make contact with each other. What an extraordinary start to the Grand Prix. There goes one of the Red Bulls, a big impact.
And Massa will come back at the inside and he spins Hamilton off. And Hamilton is going to wait for the whole field to go through. He'll be at the back.
Robert Kubica leads from Fernando Alonso. Incident involving cars 1, 2 and 22 under investigation. The incident at the start between Hamilton and Raikkonen, and also the incident between Massa and Hamilton, which led to Hamilton spinning.
Hamilton has got a drive-through penalty for forcing a car, and Kovalainen slowing down. What a disastrous few seconds for McLaren. One's got a drive-through from the back of the field, and the other has broken down.
And we've got a drive-through penalty for Felipe Massa for causing that collision with Hamilton as the race leader, Robert Kubica, comes in. That hands the lead to Alonso.
Here's Hamilton coming through for his drive-through.
The critical point is that Alonso leapfrogged Kubica in the pit stop.
Both incidents thoroughly worthy of being investigated, and I absolutely agree with the decision they've made for Felipe Massa.
Kubica is the main competitor.
Understood. And full traction.
Copy. We need half a second more to finish.
I'm trying.
Oh no! Look at that! Bourdais coming out of the pit lane. Massa thinks it's mine, the line is mine, and they just run into each other. Kubica has the inside line for it. Raikkonen has to go around the outside, and Kubica makes him fly off the racetrack. Fair, I think, definitely fair. And so he's back into the points. Felipe Massa It's back-to-back wins, Singapore and Japan, for Fernando Alonso and Renault. He thoroughly deserves it once again. The drive of a great, great champion.
Yes, Fernando Alonso, very much the form man. We'll be hearing a great deal from Lewis during the course of the next half hour. But in your opinion, what should he and the team have learned from that experience in Japan?
I think they have to come away from that thinking about what went on into turn one, and I think that's going to happen today. There's going to be a lot of thinking before he gets there. Is he going to try and make a dive down the inside again? And if there's someone alongside, which could be Kimi Raikkonen with the fast starting Ferrari, or is Lewis just going to back off and just eliminate some of the risk? You know, over the last few days, I'm sure he's been breaking open some fortune cookies out here, trying to understand what the best thing is to do. But he's got to just take things step by step.
And Lewis also knows that he has to keep it legal, whatever that means these days. The stewards are having a bigger and bigger influence on things. Have you made any more sense of that decision that penalised Bourdais and gave an extra point to Massa?
No, not at all. I don't make any sense out of it whatsoever. From my point of view as a former driver, let's be very clear on this, Steve, yeah? You cannot see anything in terms of peripheral vision. He had no way of understanding Massa was going to be on his left-hand side. He comes out the pit lane, he's deemed to be the racetrack, he's racing for position, and he did exactly what was asked of him. He even climbed up the curb to try and get out the way. Massa made the decision of trying to overtake him, and I think that was the wrong decision. I don't think Bourdais did anything wrong in my eyes whatsoever.
Well, whatever the professionalism of the teams and the talents and the courage of the drivers, it could well be the opinions of the stewards that ends up deciding this championship. So who exactly are the stewards? How exactly do they do their job? Louise Goodman has been trying to find out.
Sporting officials seldom have an easy ride. Referees, umpires, they all come in for criticism, and the Formula One equivalent, the FIA stewards, are no exception. They've been accused of making a few questionable decisions this season, like not giving Kimi Raikkonen a penalty for taking Soutel out of the race in Monaco, then docking Hamilton and Rosberg 10 grid places for this incident in Montreal. Questions were also raised when Ferrari were just given a fine for dangerously releasing Felipe Massa into the Valencia pit lane when GP2 driver Karen Chanduk had been slapped with a 10-second stop-go penalty for the same offence. Felipe Massa's collision with Sebastian Bourdais in the Japanese Grand Prix was another contentious episode. Most seasoned observers called it a racing incident, but the stewards saw it differently. In their opinion, Massa was ahead at the safety car line, and given the speed differential between the two cars, Bourdais should have known the Ferrari would be ahead at the corner and therefore taken appropriate action, even though the pair were racing. Do you feel there was any other action that you could have taken, anything else that you could have done?
Yeah, unroll the red carpet and say, here you go, the corner is yours. That's apparently what you need to do.
Bourdais was on the inside line. He put his car onto the curbs. He cannot disappear. He cannot be air suddenly. I just think it wasn't his fault at all.
So who are the men making these decisions, and what are their credentials for the job? The three FIA stewards who preside over each race meeting are all senior officials in their national motorsport authority. Two are selected from the list of international stewards compiled by FIA boss Max Mosley at the start of each season. The third is a representative of the country hosting the event. All three must hold a steward's super licence, but racing experience is not a prerequisite for the job. The chairman of the stewards is Alan Donnelly, a former Labour MEP from Jarrow, who is a specialist in sports governance. His company provides policy and public affairs advice to the FIA. Donnelly does not vote on decisions. His role is to facilitate and coordinate the process. Incidents will always occur on the racetrack, but how can the regulatory process be improved? One solution that's been suggested is a permanent team of stewards officiating throughout the season.
If there would be all the time the same people, probably it would at least give them more even results all the time. It would be always the same penalty on same thing, and now it sometimes changes quite a bit.
We've tried all that. I mean, it's like a referee in a football match. They give a red card and everybody said they shouldn't. That's how it is. It's opinions.
Well, we all understand that, but presumably you don't change your opinion after seeing that explanation of the Bourdais decision.
No, I don't change it at all, and I think there should be an ex-driver or somebody who's got racing experience that can reflect into the conversation before they make a decision. Those guys don't have any experience sitting in a Formula One car. And the other thing for me, yes, consistency is a key word. They need to be consistent with these penalties being handed out. And if we're going to reflect on 11 guys or 22 guys, you know, with a football, I'm amazed by that, because we're dealing with one of the most technically advanced sports in the world, and it should be able to be governed in the same way.
What sort of effect is it having up and down the pit lane? Are drivers feeling nervous, inhibited?
the guys don't know what they can do and can't do. There's several things have gone on during this season, and when you look at what they do, if they make a move, is it going to stick? Do they make a move in the pit lane? Is there going to be something that goes on afterwards? Do they get the penalty? Do they get 10 slots back? It's a mismatch. They need to be able to go out there and race, and that's what we want to see. Guys at 200 miles an hour plus, wheel to wheel.
Well, as far as the leading contenders were concerned, the stewards didn't have a great deal of influence over qualifying yesterday, and James Allen can tell the full story of how the grid was formed.
Hamilton, Raikkonen, Massa, Alonso. We've got the same first two rows of the grid as we had at last year's Chinese Grand Prix, but the circumstances are quite different, and Hamilton will be hoping that the outcome is too. The McLaren looked the car to beat throughout free practice in the first two parts of qualifying. Hamilton was looking confident, but Massa was breathing down his neck. They finished 1-2 in the second part of qualifying. Not so lucky was Robert Kubica, the third World Championship contender. A handling imbalance meaning he wound up 11th. Into the pole position shootout, and it was Kovalainen who set the early pace, but he let himself down on the final run, winding up 5th. Comeback king Fernando Alonso squeezed the maximum out of the Renault to snatch 4th, while Massa had the same problem getting his tyres to perform consistently as in Fuji. He's 3rd on the grid. Raikkonen again nailed a front row slot, but he was 0.3 of a second adrift of a very confident looking Lewis Hamilton.
Q1 was good. Q2 was okay. I usually like to just do one lap, but everyone went out on the option, which was quicker. So I had to do that also, which was no problem. And then in the Q3, my first lap, it's very hard when you go out and first of all, you have no fuel, and you have loads of fuel in the car, and it's a big difference. And I had a big wide moment, but I corrected it on the last lap, which was a really good lap for me. I was very happy with it.
I didn't have a good lap, that's clear, and but the balance was different compared to Q2. Q2 was so easy to make the lap, and Q3 was just impossible. So I think, some things happens when we put fuel in the car, and the car changed a little bit.
There are two drivers standing in front of me in Drivers' Championship, with especially Lewis with big gap, and if I would have opportunity to fight, I have to finish twice second at least. And lately we are not scoring such a good results with our pace.
So here's how they line up for this critical Grand Prix. On the front row, Lewis Hamilton, his second pole in a row with Kimi Raikkonen, who caused him so much trouble last time out in Fuji. Massa has never won a race when he didn't start on the front row of the grid. Alonso was stellar in qualifying. Kovalainen was just a few thousandths slower than Massa, but it puts him down in 5th, Vettel 6th. Then it's Jarno Trulli and Sebastian Bourdais on row 4. Through to row 5, Nick Heidfeld penalised 3 places for a block on David Coulthard and Nelson Piquet. Robert Kubica just outside the top 10. He's still a championship contender though, and Timo Glock is 12th. Rubens Barrichello completely outpacing his teammate Button. Rosberg's 14th. Then it's Coulthard and Webber, who dropped 10 places for an engine change. Nakajima had a poor day at the office in qualifying, so too did Jenson Button. They're on row 9. And Sutil and Fisichella bring up the rear.
Everyone came here talking about Ferrari's pace advantage, but there wasn't much evidence of it in qualifying yesterday.
It seemed to be a little bit down to where they felt they should have been. I think at some point they were actually sandbagging, and maybe when it got to crunch point, Lewis did a lap which put them in their place. But at the end of all of this, I think the important element will be, Steve, who's going to drag down into turn 1, and we know that the Ferrari is probably the best starting Formula 1 car on the grid.
What did it tell you also about who might be carrying the fuel between Raikkonen and Massa?
Well, I think Raikkonen may be a little bit lighter, and maybe that's definitely a strategy has been put in place by Ferrari, and he's going to want to try and get in front and make things difficult for Lewis. And if the opportunity for Massa comes, he's going to try and go by, and I'm sure there'll be a situation where Massa gets by Raikkonen easily as well. So let's wait and see on that.
Well, yesterday was also one of those days where you thought qualifying should be worth a lot more than it actually is. Lewis Hamilton put himself under pressure, but then responded with a magnificent, aggressive, accurate lap to take pole position. And Martin Brundle has been taking a closer look at exactly how he did it.
The Shanghai International Circuit for the Chinese Grand Prix, just under 3.4 miles. It's a 56-lap race. Let's take a look at yesterday's pole position lap from Lewis Hamilton and understand the layout of this racetrack. Up to 190 miles an hour down the pit straight. Turns 1, 2 and 3 are very unusual. Turn 1 is really a braking zone, an approach down 3 gears, He'll not touch the throttle again until he's exited turn 2, just gradually decreasing the speed, slightly downhill for the heart of turn 3. Even now, he's got to be careful, putting the power on, still turning left, otherwise he'll break traction. Through turn 4, it's a sweeping right-hander, heavy braking for 5. 60 metres before the corner, a little lock up at the front, just wandering a bit wide through the apex. Now he's really got to let the car go. Turns 6 and 7. This is 175 miles an hour. 7 is about 150 on a trailing throttle. We're approaching turn 8 now, 100 mile an hour left-hander. A squirt of the throttle again for the 110 mile an hour left. A short straight ahead up to 180 miles an hour for the critical 55 mile an hour left at the end, bumping across the curb, steps the back end of the car out. This is a long, long right-hander. He's struggling to keep the back in line. Now he's away as the downforce builds, so does the grip, and he eases it onto the back straight. Up to 195 miles an hour now. All the driver can do is wait patiently and try to spot the braking point. It'll be on the left-hand side, and there he goes, 90 metres before the corner, down to 50 for the hairpin, and away. Again, traction critical. One very good last corner to go. It's unsighted at the top of this little crest. He's hustling the car. The back is trying to get away from him. Stay on the right-hand side for the shortest route to the line. A tremendous pole position from Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis arriving on pole, and Lewis arriving here earlier today, looking very calm, very confident. He'll be talking to us about the psychological approach to what lies ahead in just a few minutes' time. We'll be hearing his thoughts on that, but I'm sure his thoughts are also full on his approach to this first corner here at Shanghai with Raikkonen alongside. Is it an easier first corner to defend in comparison to Fuji?
I think it is a little bit easier. There's definitely that added to that, but what I've got to say as well is that, you know, all of the guys on the grid, they're all world-class drivers. The driving is the easy part, believe it or not. Behind the wheel is the easy thing for these guys. It's up here, psychologically, who's going to cope with it most. And we saw in Japan, both the contenders for the world title, a little bit adrift with what went on with a trainer fault. This is what we've got to watch today.
So what might be the psychological approach for Lewis, given the experience he had here last year? Off pole position, seemingly heading to the world title, and then going so terribly wrong.
Well, he knows what went wrong last year. He's got a lot of time to have reflected on that, but he also understands what's needed for today, and I think he's got to reflect on the Japanese Grand Prix on that front. Let's hope this situation doesn't happen. Saying that, we saw that there was a situation yesterday where he actually ran off the pit lane. Maybe he's just practicing his three-point turns, I don't know. But, you know, I don't think that will happen again.
But as he says, he feeds off those kind of experiences, and his response in that pole position lap was absolutely stunning yesterday. You wish that every aspect of Lewis Hamilton's season could be quite that perfect, but that hasn't been the case. And in comparison to his 2007 consistent progress to the top, well, this season has been a real battle to get to the top of the championship and stay there as well. He won the opening round in Australia, lost his way in Bahrain and Barcelona, briefly hit the front again with his win in Monaco, and then came the problems in Canada and France. And it wasn't until his back-to-back wins in the British Grand Prix and in Germany that he got to the top of the table and stayed there. But his lead has never been more than 7 points, partly because of those rulings by the stewards, but mainly through self-inflicted damage.
According to Chinese tradition, being surrounded by red brings one happiness, luck, prosperity and joy. According to Lewis Hamilton, though, it just means a lot more to worry about off the start line. This has been a season peppered with misjudgments, misunderstandings and missed opportunities. A bad start from pole last week led to a crash with Massa and 10 points lost. Further valuable points went astray by rear-ending Fernando Alonso in Bahrain. Then the he's only got himself to blame moment in the Canadian pit lane, while cutting the chicane in France led to one of 4 stewards' penalties against Hamilton for the season, more than any other driver. Ferrari will gang up on Lewis again today, but he just wants to avoid that moment when things start to go wrong.
When you miss, I think it's more you relax and you're just in your element.
Is it to your benefit, Felipe, that you know that Lewis is a bit nervous about these starts and having 2 very fast-starting Ferraris behind him?
I mean, you cannot think on that. I mean, you need to think to do your best, and that's the way I think. And we need to think about myself and trying to do the best race possible. And what's happened, you know, is not important now.
Hopefully we can have a good start and try to challenge for first place and go from there. It's going to be a long race. The weather can change, what I heard, so we just keep pushing and see where we end up.
We're definitely making better starts than we were in the last weekend, and it's something we've tried to make sure we correct. For sure, Ferrari, they seem to have the better starts of everyone at the moment, but hopefully we'll be able to keep up, at least try to match it if we can.
Hamilton's mistake in the pit lane here in practice was an unwelcome reminder of China 2007. McLaren's still nervous that this championship might get away from them like it did last year.
I've been nervy for the last 19 years. You know, you convince yourself that once the cars are on that formation lap, there's absolutely nothing you can do. So why be nervous? But the reality is I still am 19 years after first doing it. So you know, whoever's in the car, you feel that anything can happen at the first corner. That's the exciting thing about Formula One.
I feel that tomorrow's going to be my job, getting over, obviously, the last race and putting that behind me and really putting together a solid race. Getting back on the top step would be a dream. Well, I've had a lot of these kind of experiences like Fuji, so it was, I'm sure, all the different bad races I've had are really trying to prepare me for that kind of day, and it was one of the hardest experiences for me to deal with. You know, when you start from pole position, you make a mistake and it ends up you finish in 12th. It's a horrible feeling, but I needed time alone, so I stayed in Sunday night. I had Monday to myself. Tuesday I flew here and I recovered really, really well.
It meant, of course, back home a bit of a field day for the critics, and other drivers have been having a bit of a say as well. Any of that struck home at all?
No, I think if anything, that's added to me feeling so good, you know, because you can kind of laugh it off and look at the situation as a positive, because if you look at all the past champions, they've all had a tough time at the front, people complaining, and it's just the way sport is, and it's the way people get when they're not winning. And all I can say is I'm not going to change as a person. I'm not going to change the way I drive, because this is what's got me here, and I just have to hope. I mean, I'm sorry that they all feel that way, but you know, I could just look forward and do my job and be. You know, my family love me, and that's all that matters.
You've been talking a lot this week about your own racing instinct and the way that you're a sort of a slave to that in race circumstances, and that comes first. What sort of role does psychological preparation for a race like this play for you, though?
It plays a huge part. I come here psychologically in a much different position than I was last year. I came here off a high last year after Fuji's win. And we were competitive all weekend. We qualified pole. I drove really well, and then we had a huge knock where we didn't finish the race. And it was so much pressure, because everyone said you can win the championship here and now, and people are saying that now, but I'm not focusing on this race as a championship winning race. I'm looking at this race as a race where I need to score points, and I go to Brazil, and China and Brazil are really the two races that I have to do very good to collectively get enough points to win the championship. And so it's a slightly different approach, and I'm for sure after the last race a lot more humble, I guess.
Perfect response is the pole position that you got today. It's the pole you wanted. It might not be the grid that you wanted with the two Ferraris surrounding you. How much of a challenge is tomorrow's start going to be?
Tomorrow will be tough, for sure. I have no doubt that I'll have a good start, but Ferrari always have great starts, so I'm battling two Ferraris behind me, also Fernando's there. But I'm just looking forwards, and I try to have redeem myself with a good finish tomorrow. It would be great to finish on the podium.
That was Lewis talking last night. Two specific criticisms have been aimed at him the past week. Firstly, that in terms of decision-making and racecraft, he's far from the finished article.
Let's take on board where he's at. He's only in his second season of Formula One. He's a young guy, 23 years old. He's in a top team, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he's been leading the World Championship again in his second year. Yes, he's going to make some mistakes. They're going to be very public. And yes, we can all look back and say, why did he do it? And that can be done with anyone behind their wheel. I don't really lay too much blame on him at his doorstep for that.
And the other opinion that's been expressed up and down the pit lane, I'm not too sure how accurately it's been reported, but that in terms of his driving style, he's sometimes a danger to other drivers.
No, I don't go with that, Steve. I think, what we've got here is a very refreshing, aggressive racing driver. He makes moves. he puts opportunities in place and then he takes them. And, you know, a lot of guys out there, I think sometimes they forget where they're at. They forget that they're still in a Formula One car and it's capable of doing things. And, you know, he makes those things happen, and he's a pleasure to watch.
And at the end of the day, he's leading the World Championship by 5 points, and he could take the title today. But he has got two rivals, of course. Robert Kubica, who maybe is more of a distant rival after his problems in qualifying yesterday. But Felipe Massa, in brilliant form for Ferrari, is the man who could really spoil things for Lewis. As Lewis Hamilton settles into his car, let's take a look at the other title challenges.
While Lewis Hamilton has lost points through 4 unforced errors, more often than not it's been Ferrari's mistakes that have cost Felipe Massa. He could easily have won the championship by now, had the engine not gone in Melbourne and Hungary, had the car been anywhere near drivable in the wet at Silverstone, and had a flawed pit stop traffic light system and a trigger-happy mechanic not cost him the victory in Singapore. Still, Felipe has 2 races in which to make up 5 points on Lewis. He at least has Kimi Raikkonen to help him out, even if Kimi would really rather the McLaren won the title than have his teammate being champion in the garage next year. But with Chinese martial arts film star Jet Li lending Massa his support this weekend, and with more Hamilton misfortune, Felipe could yet end up being the one.
Robert Kubica's the surprise candidate in the championship runoff. He eased his way into contention with a string of podiums at the start of the season. Victory in Canada, a first for Kubica and his BMW team, put the pole right up at the top of the table, 4 points clear of Hamilton and Massa. Kubica's form's been a bit erratic since then, but podiums in Monza and Fuji have kept him in the hunt. It'll be tough to overhaul a 12-point deficit in the last 2 races, and Kubica didn't help his chances by qualifying 11th here in Shanghai. But this time last year, Kimi Raikkonen was 17 points behind the leader, so don't discount Robert just yet.
Kubica today has certainly got to go all out for race victory, but does that apply to Massa as well?
I think Massa has to do the same. He has to go and collect those 10 points and try and make a big impact into this World Championship race. But it's going to be difficult for him, it really is. He's starting behind in the second row there, and he's going to have to watch Raikkonen and Lewis Hamilton, his main rival, fight it out.
And if it does head to Brazil, Massa wouldn't want the margin to be any more than 5 points to Hamilton.
No, that's for sure. And I think, you know, if Massa can do something where he at least takes it to Brazil, he'd be happy with that result today. But Lewis Hamilton will not be happy with that. He'll want to try and make sure that things get finished off by the end of this race.
Well, Lewis has been showing absolutely no signs of tension during the course of this weekend. I'm not sure you can say the same about his McLaren team, as we heard from Martin Whitmarsh a short time ago. What extra measures would they have taken to make sure they get things absolutely right?
It's a difficult one, Steve. I think they've really got to make sure that everything's been double-checked, triple-checked, and they've got to understand what decisions they take during the race, if any, can't be looked at and can be reflected on by another team as a mistake, or maybe even the governing body. So it's a case of routine for many of these things, whether it's the driver or the team. The process is still going to be the same.
Heikki Kovalainen has just left from the garage alongside, and really Lewis will be full of regret really relying too much support from his teammate today.
It's been a great shame in terms of Kovalainen not giving enough support to Lewis, but I think Lewis is understanding of the fact that he's not quite got a teammate who's up to the pace of himself yet. But Kovalainen will want to make amends. He's been good in qualifying normally, but he's just not strong enough when it comes to the race. And he's probably 2 or 3 attempts, maybe half a second a lap slower than this man here.
Now the tyre warmers come off, and dare we say that World Championship title beckons again, just as it did almost exactly 12 months ago. Lewis Hamilton on his way to pole position, will be out there on the grid with Martin Brundle as well very shortly. But is he also heading to the ultimate destination in his extraordinary journey through motorsport so far?
When I met Ron Dennis, I asked for his autograph. I asked for him to put his address down and his phone number. He wrote in the autograph book, phone me in 9 years and we'll sort something out then.
Give me one more chance and you'll be satisfied.
Lewis Hamilton, perfect 10.
Give me 2 more chances.
Lewis has hit the barriers. Lewis Hamilton is a Monaco winner. Brilliant. that's really on it.
He's never lost his confidence, and to a certain extent he's got our confidence back with the manner in which he's taken pole position for this Chinese Grand Prix. But the supreme test is how Lewis Hamilton can resist the challenge of Raikkonen and Massa, and maybe Alonso as well. The World Championship is the prize, and it could be Hamilton's today. But one mistake now from any of the three contenders, and the world title dream could be shattered.
We've seen both the leading championship contenders suffer from the pressures of a turbulent 2008 season. Mistakes have been made on both sides, adding to the intensity here in China.
I understand there's a lot of pressure, but I keep it outside the bubble,
I feel in the position to do my job in the best way I can.
Both drivers have been intent on projecting a calm and relaxed persona, but despite outward appearances, it's no easy task keeping your head under pressure, as many who face the challenge can testify.
Some people relish it and love it, and other people find the pressure sometimes overbearing. Michael used to go very quiet. He would just go extremely quiet, wouldn't talk about general things, and you could just see he was wasn't tightening up, but he was just getting very intense.
No, it's about minimising mistakes, it's about managing risk, it's about making intelligent decisions with very little information and very, very quickly.
When it really matters, like at the end, it becomes very difficult to make decisions. When you are under pressure and when you have to concentrate your abilities and all your energy on one thing, the true side of yourself comes out. That's normal for a human being, I believe.
It's tough being the focus of so much attention whilst you're trying to just concentrate on the job in hand. Then there's the added stress that comes from your peers. Fernando Alonso's declared his support for Felipe Massa, whilst Adrian Sutil's firmly behind his old mate Lewis.
He's the favourite, for my opinion, the best driver in this year, and he deserved the championship.
I think Felipe is a bit more relaxed because it's probably his first real crack at one, which you might think that he should feel more pressure. But I think that coming to these two races last year for Hamilton, obviously doesn't have great memories of these two races for himself.
Everybody would get more nervous than you would maybe at the beginning of the year, but he's shown over the past years that he can handle that without any problems. So I don't think that's an issue for him.
Talking specifically about Felipe, I think he's very eager to do it. Very, very, very. But it's a different pressure. It's the Italian press, it's the whole team, it's Montezemolo, it's the story of Ferrari.
Whoever wins it, whoever has the most points in the end deserves it. So it doesn't matter which way you get it as long as you get it.
It's pressure for everybody, and this is when Formula One is absolutely at its best. Maybe the pressure is off for the likes of Nico Rosberg, but we tend to think that the pressure is just on Lewis Hamilton. But what about Felipe Massa and the feelings within Ferrari? How do you feel Massa is well equipped to cope with what lies ahead in the next two races?
I think he's got all of the equipment to get the job done. I really do, and I think he's had an outstanding season. But there's been a number of things that haven't gone his way, and you can say that about a number of drivers. But I think there's Ferrari, a lot of heritage there. They know how to win a world championship. I think Massa's been alongside Michael Schumacher in winning world championships. He's seen what it takes, and it's just a little bit of temperament there, just understanding whether the temperament's solid enough to get the job done.
And it's interesting also to reflect that he's never won a race from anywhere else but the front row, and he's on row 2 today.
Yeah, that's been something about Massa what's been evident over the seasons gone by. When he starts in pole position, starts in the front, he runs away with things. But when he's a little bit further down the grid, he has somewhat of a struggle to try and fight his way through. Whether that's going to be the case today, we're really going to have to wait and see. But I think nobody would be more focused than him to do it.
Sebastian Vettel there, who had that breakthrough win in Monza. Robert Kubica, who's back on 11th on the grid and with just a distant shot at this World Championship title. We'll have reflections from down there on the grid with Martin Brundle in just a few minutes' time. For that, a quick reminder of the website where you can register your opinions on all things Formula One. You can get all the news and check the details on the ITV F1 competitions, of which this is the latest.
This weekend's fantastic prize is a trip for two to Australia for the first race of the 2009 Formula One season on the 28th and 29th of March next year. You and a friend will be flown down under, have 4 nights accommodation in a 4-star hotel close to the track, and be gifted 3-day race weekend tickets to enjoy the Grand Prix at the famous Albert Park circuit. So to be with a chance of winning this great prize, just answer this question correctly. Which city currently hosts the Australian Grand Prix? Is it A, Perth, B, Melbourne, or C, Sydney? Here's the number to dial: 09049 596789. Calls cost £1 from a BT landline. Calls from other networks may be higher, and from mobiles will be considerably more. Or you can text F1 followed by your answer of A, B, or C to 63337. Text also costs £1 plus 1 standard network rate message. Digital satellite and cable viewers can enter by pressing the red button now. You can also enter for free at itv.com until 5 p.m. Friday 24th of October. Entrance must be 18 or over. Phone lines close 5 p.m. this coming Tuesday, the 21st of October, and entries made after the closing time won't be counted but may still be charged.
So good luck with that. We await the presence of Martin Brundle down there on the grid. As all the other drivers are into their final preparations. Jarno Trulli, who will start on row 4 for Toyota. But what are his thoughts, Martin Brundle's thoughts in particular, on what lies ahead this afternoon? Let's go down to Martin, who's there on the grid.
Tense anticipation down here on the grid. Of course, Hamilton can secure the Drivers' World title today, and Ferrari can take the Constructors' title too, of course. Sort of a stadium effect down here with those aeroplane wings up the top there. That's the press office and VIP offices, and these magnificent grandstands. It does feel really exciting, really tense down here. Now down to the first corner is completely different to last weekend in Fuji. There it was a long run down to a very slow corner. Here it's a shorter run down to a high speed turn in to the first corner. And what we've seen in the other races, GP2, Formula BMW, is that those drivers that can hang on around the outside of 1 and 2 find themselves absolutely with the high ground for the turn into the third corner. So we might see a bit of that going on this afternoon. Now Lewis Hamilton, let's see if we can dive in and find a few of the drivers. None of them are on the grid at the moment, I'm hearing. I want to just talk to Norbert Hauke, who's the head of... Norbert, we're live on the British TV at the moment. So we're hearing that you've changed 2 wishbones, one on each car, rear wishbones of Kovalainen and Lewis Hamilton. Do we need to worry about that?
No, I don't think so. You know, this is just a check, and of course in such deciding races, such important races, you want to be very, very careful. But I think the team is really focused and doing a great job, and it was a shame that we suffered an engine failure for Heikki, first in 2 years. Should not happen, and we have to apologize to him because he was in a position to win. But I think everybody did a good job, and including Lewis, of course, who put the car in pole position.
Now, engines are quite interesting here because Lewis has a fresh engine today and the Ferraris don't. But critically, for the last Grand Prix in Brazil, Lewis is going to have a used engine. How important is that?
It's not too big a handicap. I mean, a fresh engine is better, but let's say 2 years ago, it was quite a difference of, let's say, 2-3 tenths per lap. But now, our guys in HP, high-performance engines and Brixworth did a fantastic job, and I think it's not a handicap in the second race. You just need to use the engine as much as you should, and then it's okay.
Okay, thanks, Norbert. Well, let's hope they don't have to compromise the use of Lewis's engine today. Now, I always think, I mean, Lewis is on pole. If you saw our track guide a little earlier on, you may have noticed that as they come out of the last corner, they stay on the right-hand side of the track. And that actually, for me, makes the left-hand side of the track, where pole position is, slightly the dirtier side of the track. And I always used to think that, see this white line and then the red line, immediately after Lewis leaves the grid, he's got to go across these. They're not going to have the same level of grip. So I think
that can often be a disadvantage. Now, Raikkonen, Hamilton doesn't talk on the grid, nor does Kimi Raikkonen, but he starts 8 metres behind. That's the difference between first and second on the grid. And then, of course, another 8 metres all the way down. Let's see if we can dive in and talk to Felipe Massa, a man who's got a job to do today. I've got a feeling there's going to be an army of people around him. He's with Rob, he's not with Rob Smedley. No chance today. He's always keen, normally. But Felipe there then is obviously 10 times today. He's got to get the job done. He knows that he needs to keep within distance of Lewis Hamilton. And of course, Hamilton's just got a posse of people behind him who don't want him to win the championship. Raikkonen alongside him, Massa directly behind him, and Alonso over here, who said, you know what, I'd like Kubica to win it, but if he's not going to win, I'd like Felipe Massa to win, and I'll do everything I can to help him. So if you're looking in your mirrors, you're Lewis Hamilton up the front there, you're going to see a Ferrari in the right-hand mirror. You're going to see another Ferrari directly behind you, a man who hates you directly just to the right of you. Let's see if we can find Kovalainen. Interestingly, not a single driver near their cars other than Massa standing over by the wall who doesn't want to talk to us. Let's talk to Pat Simmons here. Pat, what can Alonso do from that grid slot? You've won the last 2 races. What's your chances?
Well, we won it from 4th place last week, so I hope they're as good again. I mean, you know, we had a bit of luck last week, and I think there's going to be some shenanigans going on at the front anyway, so let's keep out of trouble, let's have a good race. Car's good enough.
Now, what do you tell Fernando Alonso before he heads off into a race like this, or do you just leave it to him?
No, we go through a lot of things, but, you know, with someone like Fernando, he's a good driver, he's got lots of experience, he's an intelligent guy. You don't have to tell him too much, but we do have checklists for everything.
OK, thanks for that. Well, there are no drivers coming back on the grid. They're all just staying out of the way. Louise has found Mark Webber down the back there.
Well, Mark, that engine penalty cost you dear yesterday. It's going to be tough after to do much from here, isn't it?
It is, yeah, Louise. I think, you know, with the strategies, it's so hard these days. If you're out of position in the first stint, then it's very, very hard. So obviously my fuel load is probably a little bit lighter than the people around me here because we try to take part as best we could in Q3. And try and also know that we're going to get the penalty and be ahead of sort of the Force Indies and those guys, because it's very easy to qualify 9th or 10th and be just with them. So either way, a 10-place penalty 5 rows back is you're gone, basically. So it's going to be tough, yeah, and hopefully we can get something out of it at the end, but it's going to be a long race. The second and third stint for me will be long.
So we could see some pretty lively action, overtaking action from you in the early laps?
Well, I hope I can do a little bit, yeah. Still not it's not like Fuji. Fuji was a little bit easier, but I'll do my best.
Well, Mark Webber has had his engine problems this weekend. What about, Mark, what we were hearing from Martin Brundle for Lewis Hamilton? Sort of pressure to get the job done on a fresh engine this weekend.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to make sure they've got everything that they can do to maximise his day. But, you know, the sequence of the engine is such that that's where he's left with an engine fresh today, and he has to take that into Brazil. But, you know, Lewis looks relaxed there, and that's a good positive sign.
His teammate Heikki Kovalainen qualifying 5th, and I think Louise has caught up with Heikki.
With Heikki, the birthday boy. Heikki, what would be the best present for you today?
What do you think? To win the race, of course, but you know, as a team, it's an important race for us. We're trying to maximize everything, take the maximum points. That's all we can do.
How do you think you're looking on race pace compared to the Ferraris?
I think we should be as competitive as them, but you know, we'll see. It depends on the traffic. It depends on many things, but we gotta be positive. Let's not worry about what might happen. Let's just worry the positive things and move on.
Enjoy the rest of your birthday. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Kovalainen can offer only distant protection to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton on pole position, and then the 2 Ferraris of Raikkonen and that man Felipe Massa. From a driver's point of view, if 2 teammates are going to gang up on another driver, how exactly does it work?
Exactly how you just explained it. They're going to gang up on him, but that won't be the case as such. I mean, if they can get the situation where maybe he's in a Ferrari sandwich, they might try and just monitor the situation. But I think we're going to see something quite special when they lead into one. I'm sure Raikkonen's going to try and make something special on the outside. He won't be happy about the case of being pushed wide in the Japanese Grand Prix by Lewis. And Lewis is just hopefully going to be sensible, and whatever comes at him, he's going to have to cope with.
Kubica there, a distant 12 points off the championship lead and back on 11th on the grid after a lot of handling problems yesterday, which possibly will still be with him today.
Yeah, I don't think it would be too different, but saying that, you know, I think they were struggling somewhat during qualifying, which is a shame because both BMWs were quick in free practice in yesterday's morning sessions. But I think Kubica pretty much is out the title race now. I'd be very surprised to see him making any inroads into that. So we're really left with the big contenders of Ferrari and Massa and Hamilton and McLaren.
Nico Rosberg for Williams back on row 7, and Lewis Hamilton on pole position, starting to get into a world of his own. Let's just give a quick mention to the other two British drivers in the field today. David Coulthard in his penultimate race and Jenson Button with no end of problems.
Yeah, Jenson unfortunately struggling with the Honda. It's not really got great performance. I think there's a lot of focus on 2009, as there should be, but he would be a little bit happier further up the grid. DC, I mean, he's getting towards the end of his career and, you know, had a little bit of a battle during qualifying, which knocked him down with Nick Heidfeld. But I think saying that, it may still be a little bit of a result out of DC. He's good during the race.
Adrian Sutil there, who once again shares the back row of the grid with his Force India teammate Fisichella. And let's get a Ferrari viewpoint. I think Ted is with Ferrari's Chris Dyer.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Chris, are you happy with the Ferrari's race pace?
Look, as good as we can tell, we weren't too bad on Friday, and we've improved the car a little bit since then, so as we saw in qualifying. So no, we should have a pretty good race pace today.
And is the team looking forward to this? I mean, the last race proved quite successful, worrying Lewis down into the first corner.
Yeah, it's going to be quite exciting. I think we'll all be holding our breath.
And what are you expecting strategy-wise? 2 stops the best way to go? 3 stops are possible?
I'd be surprised if anybody does a 3-stop.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much.
What about Lewis's own attitude off the start line? He really got the car bogged down in Japan and was looking at problems with a slipping clutch, which I think they feel they've sorted out.
Yeah, I think they would have looked at all the data to understand what went wrong there, and saying that even though he got bogged down, he made amends by going underneath Raikkonen with that move into one in Japan. But I don't think he'll be taking those kind of risks today. I'm sure of that. But saying that, you never know what happens. It's a split-second decision from a driver, and when they make it, they've got to stick with it. You know, and I think that's exactly what happened with Lewis Hamilton in Japan.
But just emphasise once again what is required from Lewis down into that first corner, and also in that sort of hairpin loop that immediately follows it.
Well, he's got to just stand his ground, and hopefully he'll get off the line. As Martin Brundle said, there's 8 metres difference already between the first position of Lewis Hamilton and then Kimi Raikkonen, so he's got the advantage there, but it's whether he can make it stick. And we all know that Ferrari is fast starting. They seem to have something very special working. And if he does get on the outside, Raikkonen gets on the outside of Lewis Hamilton and stays his ground also for those first couple of turns, he will have the lead come the end of turn 3. Saying that, Lewis Hamilton is spectacularly behind the wheel, and there's some moves that we've seen in the past that no other drivers can do, and he may choose to take that option.
You expect Alonso to be amongst it at the first corner as well?
Undoubtedly. Alonso will be in there, and he'll be watching and hovering, and if a mistake's made and an opportunity presents itself, that man there will take it.
And if you were a race steward, what exactly would you be looking for?
I'd be looking to make sure that we've got a clean run down into one, but I'd also be looking at what the situation is of all those guys sitting in the cockpits and what's going on around them.
Well, the clock ticks on, as we said at the start of the programme. It's exactly 50 years to the day that Mike Hawthorn became the first British Formula One world champion, and he clinched the title in Casablanca. What can Lewis Hamilton do in Shanghai? The more important anniversary for Lewis is that it's a year on from the race when his bid to become the first rookie world champion really started to unravel, especially in that gravel trap at the entrance to the pit lane. Back here in Shanghai today, well, he can't rewrite history, but the world title battles again in the Grand Prix of China. The final countdown to the start to the Chinese Grand Prix when we return. The Shanghai International Circuit. The arithmetic tells us that Lewis Hamilton could clinch the world title here today. Reality tells us that it's another huge battle in this climax to the championship season. Hamilton on pole for the Chinese Grand Prix. Commentators Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a rather smoggy Shanghai. Well, here we go again. A nation holds its breath. It's definitely Lewis Hamilton's championship to lose from this point on, with a 5-point lead over his main rival Felipe Massa. Pole position here today, and let's face it, a demonstrably faster car around this Shanghai circuit than the Ferrari. And yet, he's been here before and not got the job done. And last weekend in Fuji, his botched start and subsequent loss of self-control served as a stark reminder, really, that athletes can do the strangest things under pressure. Now, once again, he has 2 match points. Will he take one of them? Well, today's front row is the same as we had at Fuji last Sunday, with Kimi Räikkönen, the potential wrecking ball once again, while Felipe Massa starts third, just behind the pair of them. The little Brazilian needs a win today, really, and his only chance of getting a grip on this race is if Hamilton loses the start again. So watch out for some fireworks into turn 1. Interesting to hear Pat Simmons telling Martin on the grid that he expected some shenanigans. Really, the Ferrari has not proved itself to be as quick here this weekend as the McLaren, and Massa knows it's really got to be the start where he has to get himself in front of Hamilton, somehow mess up Hamilton's rhythm at the start of the race, because if Lewis Hamilton can get away through the first couple of corners, then in all probability he should be able to drive away from the Ferraris here this afternoon. Well, his father Anthony, as so often through the years, shaking hands with him and wishing him luck, and Hamilton made the point earlier this weekend that most seasons of his career, whether it be in karting or single-seaters, he has been in this position. He's always been competitive, always at the front of the field, and so this is nothing particularly new for him. Felipe Massa too has won championships in go-karting. He won the Italian Formula 3000 championship, but never anything quite as illustrious as Hamilton along the way. And there's a man who knows everything there is to know about locking out world titles. He had 2 chances in 2005 and 2006. He took them both. Last year, of course, at McLaren, it ended badly for him, and he was not able to take the chance to win the world title. Instead, Kimi Räikkönen came through to take it. Well, the Constructors' Championship is also can be settled here this afternoon if Ferrari score 11 more points than McLaren. It seems like a fairly tall order, even with a poor weekend like Fuji last time out. Ferrari only managed to score 8 more points than McLaren there. Let's take a look at the grid then for this penultimate round. Lewis Hamilton has only won from 2 of his 6 pole positions in Formula 1 so far. Kimi Räikkönen alongside him, then it's Massa and Alonso. Kovalainen, who was only a few thousandths of a second slower than Massa, but 2 places behind him, but he was a full 6/10 slower than Hamilton. Vettel again outstanding, Trulli and Bourdais. And then on row 5, Nick Heidfeld, who was dropped 3 places for a block on David Coulthard. Nelson Piquet, who did a terrific job yesterday in qualifying, only 0.3 of a second off Alonso, and you can't ask for much more than that from a driver in his first season in the Renault. Rubens Barrichello, again, driving for the longevity of his career, keeping Jenson Button well behind him. The 2 Red Bulls are together on the grid. There is a rather dejected Jenson Button down in 18th place, with the 2 Force Indias at the back. Quite a fast first corner here, Martin. Completely different, as you were saying in the grid walk, in character from what we had in Fuji. I've spoken to the drivers. They say it's actually relatively easy if you're front few rows to get it away. It's critical. What's critical for Hamilton is just getting that bite and getting the first 10 or 15 yards right, isn't it?
Yes, he's got to stay out of trouble in turns 1 and 2 somehow. Soft tyres there on Massa's car, but you know something, a feeling I've been getting increasingly through this weekend, and especially today, and especially on the grid, is I think the pressure is beginning to transfer to Felipe Massa. I see quite a relaxed Hamilton out there, and all of a sudden it's Massa that's got a chance to save and to win this World Championship. He's not a position he's been in before. Hamilton on the harder tyres, Räikkönen on the softer tyres. That's interesting. Normally the softer tyre will give you 2 or 3 meters off the grid in a start, so different strategies then already for McLaren and Ferrari. And in these slightly cooler conditions, Ferrari always struggle to get their tyres to work quite as well in the temperature zone. So altogether different, the way they're tyres on the front of the grid. But I don't know, I just sense a calmness from Hamilton after the pain he took last weekend. Time will tell.
No, time will tell. There is the championship situation going into this penultimate round. 5 points the margin between Hamilton and Massa. Kubica 12 points behind.
Weather, it's going to be dry start, and just after the race start by 20 minutes, it could be, it's not clear, it could be a small shower starting from turn 14. It's coming on the south of the circuit. Intensity very low. That could be some raindrops.
Well, pretty much all week the forecast for this weekend has said thunderstorms in the area, possibility of some showers. Not too many people have been talking about it today. A lot of people were talking about it yesterday. It was appearing on their radars, but it hasn't yet closed in. We will see how much of a difference it makes when and if it comes. That's the Constructors' Championship situation. 11 points over McLaren. Mercedes would do it for Ferrari. And we will see whether they're able to do that. BMW is still in touch as well. Force India still to get off the mark in the World Championship.
It's a longer lap than Fuji, more chance, especially that back straight there, to get the brakes up to something like operating. They don't really come in until about 700 centigrade.
Good job on the brakes. All brakes are looking good. Brakes are looking good.
Well, there's the information that we were just talking about then. Of course, they get real-time telemetry on the pit wall. They'll know tyre temperatures, pressures, brake temperatures, every other parameter from the engine and gearbox, suspension, the way he moves the throttle, anything you care to think of. Somebody on the pit wall and back in the McLaren garage or any of the garages can read that off, and they only tell the driver really what he needs to know, and there's no point in him having any more information than he can use.
So let's just have a quick think about the significance of this tyre situation. You see the white stripes there on the front tyres of Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton, no white stripes, indicates the harder of the two Bridgestone compounds. Clearly a little bit of this is to get that little bit of extra grip off the line. That's part of it. But part of it must be tactical as well, thinking further down the line into the race if they feel they are going to be tucked up behind Hamilton for the opening stint, get the soft tyres out of the way early on, maybe be in a slightly stronger position later on. Part of it, as you say, may well be just getting the soft tyres get up to temperature that little bit easier. We will see as the opening stint unfolds. A tremendous amount of tension. McLaren have not won a World Championship for 9 years. Ferrari, well, they've gorged themselves on Drivers' Championships with Michael Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen. So and what will the next batch of the next 56 laps hold for us?
Lewis stationary now for over 20 seconds, and still they're forming up towards the back of the grid.
Bit of smoke coming out of the back of one of the cars. Is that Massa's Ferrari? Anyway, the light's about to go on. The 56th lap 2008 Chinese Grand Prix is go. Hamilton on the right, Raikkonen on the left. It's a better getaway this time for Lewis Hamilton, and immediately he dives across and takes his line. Raikkonen follows him through and Massa behind. It's been a good start for Heikki Kovalainen, who's attacking, and we've got a crash at the back involving one of the two Toyotas. It may well be Jarno Trulli, but at the front Hamilton has got the break he wanted, and he leads Raikkonen with Massa third, and it's Kovalainen once again side by side with Fernando Alonso in a battle for 4th place.
Yeah, and Kovalainen really holding his ground well. Alonso trying to come around the outside of him. It didn't work. Great start from both McLarens. Ferrari struggling to get away. So different to recent starts. So McLaren have aced that one for sure. All of the smoke on the grid was from Heikki Kovalainen's right front brake. He'd obviously got it just a little bit too hot. And that's important for McLaren, that they've got Alonso at bay at the moment. And Alonso will want to address that on this first lap, no doubt about it.
Hamilton leads, Raikkonen is second, Massa is third, and it's Kovalainen. Alonso as Rosberg takes a little look at Mark Webber. That's the battle for 12th place here. So 4th is Kovalainen, 5th is Alonso, 6th is Nick Heidfeld, 7th Vettel. He's had a poor start as Alonso now attacks Kovalainen again.
Well, it's a straight fight. It's a horsepower fight then down to the hairpin, with Alonso having the perfect position for the braking. Kovalainen's best chance is to duck back underneath him, but he's locked his own brakes. Alonso covers the apex beautifully, and that was an important move for Renault.
There was nothing too shabby on the horsepower stakes either by the Renault engine, which has been giving something away to the Mercedes and the Ferrari throughout this season. Look at Hamilton, though, at the front, not breaking away yet, but the two Ferraris holding on behind him. Here's a scrap going on down the field. Timo Glock about to be passed by Mark Webber into turn 1, so that's a pass for 11th place then. Rubens Barrichello has also had a very good start here. He is up into 10th place. Jenson Button is 15th and David Coulthard 14th.
Well, we're expecting them to go to at least lap 14 before they make their first stop. I think everybody went quite short in qualifying, and Webber steaming through the field. Maybe he's quite light too. But Hamilton then led by 1.1 at the end of the first lap, and that lead is surely much greater now. So the perfect start to the afternoon for Lewis Hamilton. That's not a race or championship winning position at the moment, with Massa up there in third. What can Alonso do now that he's cleared Kovalainen? Kovalainen had better be on a longer fuel strategy if he's going to come into play for McLaren.
Yeah, crucial early pass there, with Alonso being passed by Kovalainen, but getting that place back again as into the pit lane comes Jarno Trulli in the Toyota, involved in that first corner collision. Bit of a change of strategy going on, I believe, with the team. Let's get some news from Ted Kravitz.
A bit of work, and they stood by with the nose, didn't have to change it, but if you just saw on that quick shot, the whole right-hand side pod was just flapping everywhere. It's just completely destroyed. I wouldn't be surprised if it falls off by itself under the aero load on the long straight, but that's going to lose him a load of downforce.
Thank you for that, Ted. I think it was Sebastian Bourdais, Martin, who must have hit Jarno Trulli, because if you look, Bourdais is down in 18th place, splitting the two Force Indias, and he qualified up in 8th place, just one less than Jarno Trulli. So I think that's what went on there into turn 1. Meanwhile, Hamilton now extends his lead up to 1.9 seconds over Raikkonen. Massa is at 3 seconds behind Hamilton at this stage. Alonso, Kovalainen, Heidfeld, Vettel. And let's take another look at the start. You see the smoke coming out of Kovalainen's wheels, as you say. Yeah,
Perfect getaway for Hamilton then. Could immediately go to block the inside, but didn't have to move too far. And Kovalainen does a very good job. They're currently in 4th place. Has a think about getting around the outside of Felipe Massa, which would have been his brief. There's the shunt going on behind between Bourdais and Jarno Trulli. Another view of that. And there it is, Bourdais getting into the inside of Jarno Trulli and clearing the way beautifully for Kubica, who's now up to 8th place. So BMW, and this is the replay of Kovalainen going too deep in that turn 13, and Alonso getting up the inside, and he now has the right position for the hairpin, and he's just so wise. He's so on top of his game at the moment, Fernando Alonso, and he didn't blow it. And there then is Jarno Trulli being lapped and getting out of the way. Let's hope he doesn't drop a lot of bodywork all over the place. Completely clearing the way there for Raikkonen, but Hamilton is already 4/10 up on this lap and really flying at this stage of the Grand Prix.
Here's Mark Webber looking at the back of Rubens Barrichello's Honda. Webber took a 10-place grid drop after having to have an engine change before qualifying. He qualified 6th and clearly had quite a light fuel load when he did that, and knowing he was going to go back 10 places, his tactic clearly is to run light and attack early on, much as Fernando Alonso did in Singapore. Of course, the disadvantage of that is the cars he's passing at the moment will all be carrying quite a bit more fuel than him, and so when he makes his early pit stop, they'll all just repass him. But he's trying to make up ground. That's the tactic. Into the pit lane for the second time comes the Toyota of Jarno Trulli, probably into retirement. Yes, there he goes. So nothing today for the Italian, who managed to qualify that Toyota up in 7th place.
Yeah, important points lost there then. Glock's 12th in the other Toyota, and a big fight going on in that part of the Manufacturers' Championship. Hamilton has, it's kind of equal. He's a 1/10 of a second up on this lap. His lead was 2.5 seconds at the end of the previous lap. So Raikkonen is now just beginning to match him. So Hamilton having just the perfect start to the Grand Prix.
And it's very interesting looking at the relative pace at this stage of Hamilton and Massa. We believe they're no more than a lap apart in terms of the amount of fuel that they're carrying, possibly lap 14 or 15 for Hamilton and 1 lap later for Felipe Massa. But at this stage, early on, Hamilton lapping low 1 minute 37s, a 37.0 on that last lap. Massa 1:38.2, 1.2 seconds slower. Here's Webber attacking Barrichello again.
Barrichello covers the racing line, the turn-in point. Whoever tries to duck underneath him, no chance. There's two wise old hands, and Barrichello's not going to give that up easily. And Webber's got to somehow stay behind the Honda through the final turn to have a chance down into turn 1, and he can't live with him. Hamilton's lead did, in fact, go up by 0.3 at the end of the lap, so he's 2.7 seconds clear of Raikkonen now, and 4.8 on Massa.
That was Massa's race engineer, Rob Smedley, just getting on the radio to speak to his man. A little bit of a look of concern, I think, on his face at this stage. The relative pace of the McLaren to the Ferrari is much faster in favour of the Ferrari than you'd expect. This last lap also was at 0.7 of a second faster for Hamilton. But what Hamilton really needs is his teammate Kovalainen to get in this fight, isn't it? To get himself in front of Felipe Massa, try and take some points away from him, because if they carry on like this for the rest of the Grand Prix, obviously Raikkonen will get out of the way of Massa, allow him to pick up the extra 2 points for second place, and that would mean that we would go to Brazil with Hamilton leading by 7 points, and that Massa needs to claw back every point he can get. Long, long way to go before we get there, of course. 52 racing laps still to go. And that's what it looks like at the front of the Grand Prix. Little lock-up right front, but it all seems fairly under control at this stage of the game.
Hamilton seems very smooth. He doesn't seem flustered at all. He's not wringing the car's neck. He's using plenty of curb. We know that they changed the lower wishbone on each of the McLarens. And apart from their rules, you're allowed to do that if there's a reliability issue. And that's what they did. So they wouldn't have done that for fun. And clearly somebody's concerned about something there.
Well, Heikki Kovalainen in 5th place is 0.6 of a second slower than Hamilton in the middle sector alone. So not only is he not in this fight getting involved on Hamilton's behalf, but he's struggling for pace himself. And Heidfeld and Vettel are coming up behind him. So Kovalainen in a bit of trouble here at this stage of the game. At the front, though, it's Hamilton leading by just over 3 seconds from Massa, Alonso, Kovalainen and Heidfeld. This is lap 8 of the Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai, the largest city in China by population, the business and financial center of the world's fastest growing economy, and the fastest man on the racetrack at the moment, without a shadow of a doubt, is this man, Lewis Hamilton. From pole position, he's led away with Raikkonen and Massa, the two Ferraris chasing him. We had a battle early on between Alonso and Kovalainen. Kovalainen briefly took 4th place away from Alonso, but Alonso repassed him on the opening lap. So Alonso is 4th, and Kovalainen is dropping away rather alarmingly at this stage in 5th place. He's now 15 seconds behind his teammate. We saw quite a lot of smoke coming out of the right front brake, as you said, on the start, and I wonder whether he's had this problem before. He's obviously done something to his brakes on the way to the grid, and he's struggling with them at this point.
Well, either he's got a long brake pedal, but his sector times are reasonable. Maybe he's grained up those tyres. He's on the same tyres as Hamilton, who's not having any problems at all. It's lap 8, and he's about 3.6 seconds ahead, and another 0.3 up on this lap so far is Lewis Hamilton. And Lewis has found the only man to drop out of the Grand Prix so far, Jarno Trulli.
Jarno, I'm guessing you're a fairly angry man after that. It's not the first time you've had an incident with Bordet at the first corner, is it?
I mean, this guy has to cool down a little bit and make up his mind, because at the start he doesn't know what he wants to do. I was side by side with Vettel. Obviously he was on the inside, so I had to give up. And then I had a hit on the rear right, and then they told me there was wood there, and my car was damaged pretty bad, and I had to retire.
Thanks, Jarno.
Yeah, it's been, well, a reasonable season for Jarno Trulli. He's got 30 points on the board, the same amount as Sebastian Vettel. I bet he'd have been a bit surprised if you told him that's the way things would end up at the beginning of the season. There is the father of Felipe Massa, watching all of this and not looking overly confident at this stage, because as was indicated by free practice and qualifying, by some margin the quickest car around this Shanghai circuit this weekend is the McLaren. And it's interesting because for the last 2 Grand Prix, Martin, we've been in Singapore and in Fuji. The fastest race laps were set by the Ferraris, then it was the Renault, and then it was the McLaren. Now, I know McLarens have had a few problems and setbacks that contributed to that, but nevertheless, the raw underlying pace in the last 2 Grand Prix was definitely with Ferrari.
Yeah, but Hamilton has just looked fast all weekend, hasn't he? Every time you looked at the timesheets, he was first or second in any session, any kind of fuel load, any of the tyres available. It's the hard tyre and the medium here that Bridgestone have brought along. We're on board with Mark Webber, chasing down Piquet. I'm pretty sure Piquet will have more fuel on board at this point as Hamilton does a new fastest lap of the race and increases his lead on Raikkonen to 4 seconds, and Webber will get the job done from there, providing he can slow down when he arrives, which he doesn't. And can he keep around the outside now to give himself the turn in? That's going to get messy, and well, he was very late on the brakes, wasn't he? Piquet yielding there.
That was very generous of Piquet. I didn't surprise he didn't come across a little bit more. He obviously didn't want to get involved in an accident. Awkward situation being Nelson Piquet. You keep hearing all these rumours that you're going to get replaced for next year. I thought he was fantastic in Japan last weekend, a really, really strong drive. But there is a kind of an underlying lack of confidence with him. You can see it looking in his eyes. He doesn't look like as though he really believes he's top class.
You don't get any support in this business. You've got to deliver. They make no allowance for experience or whatever. This is a business where every Monday morning or every Sunday afternoon to a large extent, you show the world how your business is performing. And Monday morning, the meetings come and you're not going to get a warm, cuddly arm around you as a driver. You've got to get on with it.
Well, for the first time in this Grand Prix, and this is lap 10, the fastest middle sector is a Ferrari, Kimi Raikkonen.
You'll know he's like Nelson, so don't worry.
And that's probably part of the reason why he stayed away from any potential accident, because he knows that Webber is running light. We expect him to pit around about lap 14 or 15. Same sort of time as the leaders, possibly slightly earlier. As I say, this lap, the fastest man in the middle section, in fact the fastest lap of anybody so far, set by Kimi Raikkonen. The soft tyres are starting to come in for Ferrari. This is lap 11 we've just gone on to now, and let's get some more from the pit lane and Ted Kravitz.
Just another little story I'm following down here for the last championship point at the moment between Vettel and Robert Kubica. I'm told on the radio that Kubica's engineers have radioed him and said, look, we know that Sebastian Vettel is much lighter than us. If you can stay within 7 or 8 seconds of him, then we'll be looking good in the second stops, and that's the situation there. And on this pace, with Kubica doing what he's doing, you'd have to favour the BMW, James.
Thanks for that, Ted. Well, Hamilton, that's the first lap last time around. It was lap 10 that Raikkonen has been quicker than Hamilton in this Grand Prix. Hamilton's responded with a new fastest first sector, a 10th.5 quicker than Raikkonen, but Raikkonen rebounds with another very quick middle sector. So it's punch for counter punch at the moment. And of course, they're gradually dropping Felipe Massa out of the picture. He's now 8 seconds behind Hamilton. Long way to go, though.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The Ferrari beginning to work. We've seen it quite a few times in the hands of Kimi Raikkonen. It takes time for it to come good. But Raikkonen in clear air, just 4 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, now beginning to find some speed. The chances of rain would appear to be receding here in Shanghai. It was 40% chance at the start of the Grand Prix, now gone down to 20% chance. I think all the drivers would be relieved about that. Certainly the ones in the points-paying positions at the moment. The ones that outside the top 10 would quite like a bit of rain to give them half a chance. But certainly Lewis Hamilton at the front, now losing another couple of tenths on that last lap to Raikkonen. So the Ferrari pegging him at this stage, and giving you some idea of the calculations that will be going on between the two teams on the strategy side. Here is Timo Glock battling with Nico Rosberg. This is a scrap for 12th place. Rosberg in the Williams on the right. Glock, very much like Mark Webber a couple of laps ago, taking the inside line and holding that position.
So the graining phase, the little balls of rubber on the surface of those softer tyres, Ferrari are getting that out of the way now. And also Massa getting himself up to speed and has maintained the gap at 8 seconds. Remember, Hamilton has to run those tyres later on in the Grand Prix.
Come on, Nico, we need to get past the lot. We're losing time.
Yep, they reckon they've got the strategies worked out, and they reckon that they need to get past Timo Glock here. So Rosberg has been given the hurry up. He's looking for the opportunity. Only one Toyota left in this Grand Prix, with Jarno Trulli retiring, victim of an early first lap collision with Sebastian Bourdais. What's going on with Hamilton?
Well, nice big oversteer moment there for Lewis, the sort of thing he takes in his stride, but it suggests to you, there it is, it's turn 2, suggests to you that his tyres are just beginning to go away, but he matched Raikkonen that time. Both did a 1:36.6, as did Massa. The gap stayed exactly the same. Hamilton 3.7 ahead of Raikkonen, who's 4.3 ahead of Massa, who's 4.3 also ahead of Alonso in 4th place. Kovalainen still a second a lap slow. Here we go then. This is Rosberg's moment to get past Timo Glock. The two young Germans going for it at the hairpin, and Rosberg having a fine race after a thoroughly disappointing qualifying.
Yeah, Rosberg qualified 14th, now up into 12th place. One of those positions courtesy of Trulli's retirement, another one courtesy of that pass on Glock. Webber pits from 10th place, and this is lap 13. We're expecting the leaders in the next few laps as well, and that's good news for Lewis Hamilton, I think, who will be feeling that the tyres are starting to lose performance. And if you remember 12 months ago here, on a drying track, that was the story of the Grand Prix, that Hamilton streaked away in the opening stint, took too much out of his tyres, and the Ferraris came back at him very strongly, and it was part of the factor that led Hamilton to make the mistake he did, staying out too long on worn tyres and eventually getting stuck in the gravel trap.
Hamilton 3/10 up in the first 2 sectors of this lap. It's quite smoggy out there today, so if there is a light rain cloud coming over, I think the satellites are going to pick it up before your eyes do.
Qualifying laps until you stop.
Nothing more than that, flat out. Treat it like it's the final part of qualifying. Hamilton does a new fastest lap of the race, 4/10 quicker than Raikkonen. The gap up to 4.1 now. So that slide from Hamilton wasn't about tyres, it was about starting to really push hard.
Ferrari mechanics down below us. We're at the top of the massive grandstand opposite the pits. They're just starting to get up off their chairs, stretch their legs, put the goggles on. We're not too far away, I think, from the first round of pit stops. We can't see the McLaren garage from where we are, but tense times, of course, when the teams get involved, and after Ferrari's problems in Singapore, where Massa drove off with the fuel hose still attached, there's still a slight edginess about that team in the pit stops. It's not the first time Hamilton's done that. In fact, pretty much every time we've seen him through that hairpin, he's done that.
Well, it's guaranteed. As you turn the wheel, the geometry of the suspension and the anti-roll bars in the system transfer the load to the outside tyre, and it lightens the inside tyre, inside wheel, and it'll just easily lock up.
Well, that little mistake for Nelson Piquet, who's currently running in 9th place, has allowed Rubens Barrichello in the Honda to close off in it. We haven't really talked much about Barrichello, but he was passed briefly earlier on by Webber, but he's having a fantastic drive given how uncompetitive the Honda has been recently. So his teammate Jenson Button is down in 14th place, 1 spot behind David Coulthard, as the Ferrari mechanics come out into the pit lane. We're in the box just right at the top of that grandstand. You can see the windows looking down, and McLaren are looking quite comfortable because they are not coming out for their pit stop. We believe it's Felipe Massa who's going to make the first stop. That's what we're being told from the pit lane. Into the pit lane comes the Ferrari of Felipe Massa.
Yeah, well, if McLaren were satisfied, they'll now be smiling to see Massa pit first. Whatever happens, Hamilton can't let Raikkonen get in front of him with strategy today, because he'll just back him up into the path of Massa. The lollipop being used there. We've also got Alonso in the pits, and he'll stay behind Massa then. The harder tyres going on, it seems as if they fueled him quite a bit longer. And out of the pits they go. How much further then can Hamilton and Raikkonen go? But at the moment, it's looking very good for Lewis Hamilton, providing they don't short-fill the Ferrari, get Raikkonen in front of him and allow him to interfere with Hamilton's progress.
Massa rejoins in 8th place behind Robert Kubica. Then it's Nelson Piquet, and then Alonso slips in behind his teammate Piquet in 10th place after those pit stops. McLaren now ready for Lewis Hamilton. We saw Ferrari putting 9.1 seconds, or the stationary time was 9.1 seconds. That's quite a long middle stint. That is something in the region of, well, to over 20 laps in the middle stint. So quite a long middle stint for Massa, who's going to have to push very hard now.
And where's that? That's out of the last corner. That's an unusual place for a car that's clearly stopped. Hamilton then in the pit lane of his nightmares, where he ended up last year. Here's the speed limit lane now. line 50 miles an hour. A lot of pressure on the McLaren boys. And look, Raikkonen in too.
These are the details that count for so much. There is no scope for any slip-ups, whether by driver or by team at this stage of the World Championship. On go another set of the harder tyres for Hamilton. He too has refueled, quite a long middle stint for him. Raikkonen has switched to the harder tyre too. He's got the softs out of the way then. And as they rejoin, it looks as though Raikkonen's closed a bit of that gap up. It was 4.5 seconds on the way in. Of course, slightly deceptive because Hamilton able to accelerate before Raikkonen does. 25 laps of fuel is the estimation for Raikkonen. Similar amount for Lewis Hamilton.
And Raikkonen has Vettel in front of him, who we think is fueled longer. Hamilton doesn't. So that worked out quite well for him, and they've got a decent chunk of fuel in the car. So Raikkonen not short fuel to get him out in front.
Definitely not. So Kovalainen is leading this Grand Prix. He was nearly 20 seconds behind Hamilton when Hamilton made his stop, so almost a pit stop behind. Heidfeld second, Hamilton slots back in third, with Vettel between himself and Raikkonen. Kubica sixth, Massa seventh, Piquet in 8th place, as I think it's Adrian Sutil walks back to his garage. Another retirement for Force India. Let's take a look at what happened here. Smoke coming out the back of the car. And Sutil into retirement. And let's get some more news from Ted.
Yeah, interesting changes that went on at Lewis's stop there. Very good stop, by the way, by the McLaren boys. They certainly worked hard at that. It was 1 turn, Martin, more front wing. Now, that's only 0.5 millimetre, I believe, just to try and reduce that oversteer, those Larry rear wheel moments that we saw from Lewis. But interesting also that Massa seems to be out of fashion in keeping with the softer tyres. Alonso was following the Ferrari, said they don't look good on the soft tyres, stayed with the hard tyres, as did Lewis Hamilton, as did Kovalainen, no, the other one, the other kid, what's his name? Raikkonen, that's it. Raikkonen, he went to the harder tyres, and it's only Massa now on the softs.
Thank you for that, Ted. Yep, there's a confirmation. Felipe Massa coming across the line in 7th place. He is 6 seconds behind his teammate, so we'll monitor that, see how the two different types of tyre are performing. As far as I can see, Martin, they're on a similar sort of strategy, the top three, aren't they? They all came in at roughly the same sort of time, a lap apart, and they all put just over 9 seconds of fuel in. It looks like Lewis possibly put a tiny bit more in than Massa, but Massa running the softer tyre, so let's see how they held up in the middle stint.
Yeah, and Massa running that tyre because he clearly preferred it, otherwise he wouldn't have put it on. They've only got to run it through 1 stint. And so Massa then struggling for raw pace. His answer is to try the softer tyres for 2 of those stints. Hamilton then, let's see what the gap came out at. I think it's now 5.6 seconds ahead. He is indeed 5.6 seconds ahead of Raikkonen, with Vettel in between them.
Yep, so he added just over 1 second to the lead he had before the pit stops. There's his brother Nicholas, who did his GCSEs this summer and is moving on in his education, and also very much enjoying his slot car racing. He competed with Lewis in a slot car event a few weeks back. It's of course where Hamilton started his passion for all things with 4 wheels. That's the order at the moment. Kovalainen, Heidfeld have not stopped. Hamilton has. Vettel has not stopped. Raikkonen is 12 seconds behind Kovalainen, and I guess the consolation for Massa is that no other car is fast enough to get between him and Hamilton. So even though Raikkonen will obviously yield the place as Heidfeld pits, Raikkonen will yield, I'm sure, later in the Grand Prix, giving Massa the opportunity to take 2nd place. And the good news for Massa is that no other car is quick enough to interfere with his race.
Yes, Kovalainen leads. It's lap 18. He's doing a 37.4. Hamilton's outlap with the fuel on board was a 37.7. Raikkonen's was a 38.3. So Hamilton increased the lead by 0.6 of a second on the first flying lap after the pit stop. So the gap now then is 1.2 is, let's have a look, is over 5 seconds still.
Raikkonen having switched over onto the harder tyre. There's nothing to choose between them tactically in what they're doing. It's not as if Raikkonen was taking it easy to give the softer tyre a slightly easier time, which has been a good tactic after a pit stop this season, to make sure that they hold on throughout the stint. So that is raw pace you're seeing, the difference between the McLaren and the Ferrari straight out of the pits And let's ride on board with Hamilton. 200 miles an hour down the back straight. Going to throw the anchors out in a moment. Inside the 100-metre board when he does it. And he goes down to 50 miles an hour for turn 14. It looks pretty under control, doesn't it?
Didn't leave any time on the table there, though. It was just on the ragged edge there of locking up on the downshifts. And Hamilton charging at 1 minute 37.6. Let's see what Raikkonen's time is when he goes over the line as Kovalainen pits from what was the lead. A 37.9, so another 0.3 advantage. Hamilton now 6.6 ahead of Raikkonen. Massa did a 38.3, 7/10 slower than Hamilton. Hamilton is on fire again.
Yeah, well, he's back in the lead as Vettel pits, goes to the harder tyre. Toro Rosso, both cars qualifying in the top 10, although Bourdais dropped down towards the back with that incident with Trulli. Certainly Vettel is looking very competitive here this weekend. A slightly clumsy pit lane action, I think, by the Toro Rosso team. They'll be working on that over the winter. But nothing wrong with their competitiveness once again here this weekend. Kovalainen rejoins in 8th place. Lewis Hamilton's leading. This is lap 19 of the Chinese Grand Prix. This is lap 21 of the Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai. We're about an hour's drive outside downtown Shanghai. This is a potentially championship deciding Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton, if he wins the race with Massa 5th or lower, then Hamilton would be the world champion today. The current situation on lap 21 is that he is leading the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen by just under 7 seconds, with Robert Kubica's BMW in 3rd place, but it is a bit of a mirage because Kubica started 11th on the grid and therefore was able to set his own strategy and is obviously carrying a lot more fuel than the others. Hamilton, Raikkonen and Massa have all made their first pit stops. Kubica has not. So when he does, Massa, who is 4th at the moment, will go up into 3rd place. And that the scenario as it is at the moment will definitely take the championship battle on to Brazil in 2 weeks' time. One would expect that at some stage later in this race, Raikkonen would move over and let Massa through. Raikkonen has no say in this championship, and that would mean that if it finished that way, with Hamilton leading and Massa second, Hamilton would go to Interlagos in 2 weeks' time with a 7-point lead over Massa with a maximum 10 on the table.
Yeah, Raikkonen has settled down again. He's beginning to match and go slightly faster than Hamilton. They've moved into lap 22. The gap 6.7 seconds. Massa's 14.3 behind Hamilton now. What do they need for a pit stop difference? 25, 27 seconds, something like that, James. And so he's already halfway towards having a whole pit stop advantage over his main championship rival. And critically, that sort of bookends Ferrari a bit. They can't really bring Raikkonen into play, can they now? Next fuel stop will be whatever fuel he needs to get to the end of the Grand Prix. And Massa's so far behind that what can they do with Raikkonen now? Unless Hamilton makes a mistake or has a sticky wheel in a pit stop or something, it's just what he needs.
6 laps longer than us. Heikki 6 laps longer than us.
And he's 6 seconds behind. He's talking about Heikki Kovalainen, who's 7th. Alonso 6th at the moment. That's because Piquet and Kubica have yet to stop. Look at the marbles on the side of the racetrack, the discarded rubber. Anybody who runs a little bit wide in some of these critical areas on the track, especially the high-speed corners, will go sailing off the road.
Yeah, very slippery. It's not taken long for those marbles to build up, has it? It's only 21 racing laps down. We've only got 2 retirements, Sutil and Trulli. The story really of the Grand Prix so far, from pole position, Lewis Hamilton leading away into turn 1. A much better start here than he got in Japan last week from pole position. He's really putting in the drive he was expected to put in last week. And he has driven away really from the 2 Ferraris. Raikkonen's kept him honest in the first stint. They all pitted at more or less the same time, and they all put more or less the same amount of fuel in, although I think Hamilton put a tiny bit more in. But it's going to be a long middle stint for all 3 of the front runners. The only question really in my mind now is what say will Alonso have? Can Kovalainen get in front of Alonso in the closing stage of this Grand Prix? Because at the moment it looks as though Kovalainen is beginning to discover some more pace. He's 0.3 of a second faster per lap than the Renault, and very slowly reeling him in.
The 2 tyres are very similar. Your pace is good. We go for primes.
Ted Kravitz, got some news on Lewis for us.
Yeah, just checked in with the McLaren guys who are listening into the radio. They say Lewis has called back in and said the car is perfect. The balance is really good. Since they added that little half-turn of front wing, it feels great, and he's very happy with that, which is especially good because that means they'll be able to turn the revs down just slightly on the engine to give it still some life for Brazil.
Well, it's a slightly academic point, that table you're looking at there, because it doesn't take into account the fact that Raikkonen is second at the moment, and he will give the place to Massa, no doubt, if that's what's required later in the Grand Prix. So,
yeah, you're right, James. Team tactics are not allowed in that respect after the fiasco of Austria, what was it, 2002. But Kimi Raikkonen has been saying all weekend, I know what the team expect of me. If the drivers make the decision to help each other out, then that's absolutely fine. So to that extent, it doesn't matter if Raikkonen beats Hamilton. As long as he stays ahead of Massa, he'll get those net 2 points. But as I keep saying, a long way to go. Yeah, his lead is up to 7.2 seconds now, Lewis Hamilton. That's an important thing you say about maybe just being able to wind that engine back. Remember, this engine needs to go to Brazil, whereas both Ferraris get a fresh engine there, just the way that it works out for the 2 race-at-a-time engines.
Well, you were talking to Norbert Haug, the boss of the Mercedes-Benz Motorsport operation, about that. He was saying a few years ago, as we look at a sign there for Kubica saying use LLT, a few years ago, the difference over 2 races would probably be as much as 20 or 30 horsepower at the end of the second Grand Prix, but they've done a lot of work, all the manufacturers, on improving that and reducing the friction, reducing the build-up that you get over the course of 2 Grand Prix distances plus 2 Saturdays as well. And they're talking now about the difference being no more than half a tenth, something like that, of a second.
Yeah, a half-tenth or a tenth, you'd still rather have it than not, wouldn't you? That's how close it is in Grand Prix racing now. What's going on this lap? Hamilton a tenth up in the first sector, a tenth down in the second. So he's pretty much got the measure of Raikkonen, and Massa is now on terms with them pace-wise. Kubica going a long way in the Grand Prix. He's up to 3rd at the moment, and as is Piquet 5th, and they've yet to stop. We believe Piquet's pitting this lap.
Yep, on a similar sort of pace to Robert Kubica. So it would indicate that the BMW and the Renault are similarly matched here this weekend. Kubica having a nightmare in qualifying, just couldn't get the car balanced, and that's why he started outside the top 10. And, well, any championship hopes he had would appear to be evaporating. Here comes Nelson Piquet, who was battling with Mark Webber earlier on.
I picked up the Red Bull fuel rig as the car goes down. How hard is that? It is so heavy to lift, and that was without any fuel in it. And apparently then the hose gets stiff when it's full of fuel, and obviously much heavier too. That is a major task.
And here's Mark Webber as Piquet comes back out. They were battling for position earlier on, and that's the result of it. Nelson Piquet rejoins in 10th place. It's David Coulthard, who is just behind him, then Vettel, Nakajima and Mark Webber in 13th place. Barrichello 14th. Fisichella, Bourdais, Rosberg, and Jenson Button had a very slow lap that last time through and has dropped to the very back of the field. So not quite sure what happened to Jenson Button, but his last lap was well over, well, he made a pit stop, I guess that's part of the story, but somewhere along the line, Jenson Button has lost a lot of time.
The car 20, sorry, where are we? What number is Button? 16. 16. That was at turn 16. So now there's no sign on the computer where what happened to him. It hasn't said he's gone off.
No, he made a pit stop a couple of laps ago, which is would account for the lap time of well over 2 minutes. As into the pit lane comes Robert Kubica from what was 3rd place. Where will this bring him back out again? Somewhere around Timo Glock, David Coulthard is my guess, 9th or 10th. Been a great season for the BMW team. To be even contending for the Drivers' Championship with 2 races to go, to be clearly having established a top 3 in Formula 1 and to be part of it. Definitely they've hit their targets for a 3rd successive year, and now they are gearing up for a crack at the championship in 2009. That's where a lot of the effort has gone in the second half of this year. Much to Kubica's annoyance, he felt that with a bit more development and a bit more support to him, he could have had a say in the outcome of the driver's title. But I think Dr. Mario Tyson's thinking that he likes to walk before he can run, and he wants to build up properly. to a crack at the championship next year.
The lead down to 6.9, Hamilton over Raikkonen, but he's still a 15.3, critically ahead of Massa. So a bit of a scrappy lap there for some reason for Lewis Hamilton. Nothing major though. Alonso can't make an impression on Felipe Massa. He's 5.8 seconds adrift, and Kovalainen is falling back from Alonso now. He's 6.5 seconds behind him, so any thoughts of Kovalainen getting in there amongst Alonso, not on the cards at the moment.
Well, now, as we get through the phase where the soft tyres start to kick in again, on that last lap, Massa was quicker than Lewis Hamilton, just by a fraction. But nevertheless, it's a little bit too late, really. He's 15 seconds behind him. An alarming lack of pace at various stages of this race for Felipe Massa. Heikki Kovalainen in 6th place with Heidfeld 4 seconds behind him. Kubica is going very well, also having just made that stop. Here's Sebastian Vettel. Haven't seen him for a while. He made an early stop. He's got a few cars around him that have yet to stop, including Nakajima. Just in front of him are Glock and Coulthard as well. So Vettel racing with Kubica for points here this afternoon.
Yeah, at the moment, Glock 7th, Coulthard 8th, both having a chunky amount of fuel on board at the start. This is a replay of Kubica, a tweak of front wing, leaving the tyres on then. Was that leaving the tyres on for Kubica and just a tweak of wing and some fuel?
That's the story at the front, pretty much the story as it's been throughout the Grand Prix. Ferrari would appear to have no answer for the pace of McLaren and Lewis Hamilton, and they're going to have to hope for a mistake of some sort or some sort of technical problem to have any chance of taking the Constructors' Championship here today.
Oh, Raikkonen's got the gap down to 6.6. There's another 2/10 already on this lap. It's beginning to come back at Hamilton. Hamilton's done a 37.4 across the line. Raikkonen does a 37.1. The gap down to 6.4 seconds now. Raikkonen beginning to put some pressure onto Lewis Hamilton. He'll be coming past the pit, seeing his pit board and realising he's been caught ever so slowly. 15.4 ahead of Massa, though.
There's Ron Dennis up on the McLaren timing wall. Speaking to him this morning, he was saying, what's the instruction to Hamilton today? Last week in Japan it was, if Raikkonen gets in front, don't just let him go, you're not fighting him for the championship. Advice that Hamilton then went out to ignore. Today his advice was, it's a 2-race run to the title here. Just think about the Grand Prix, don't worry too much about the World Championship. But Hamilton is in a strong enough position that he can control it from the front. He leads then, just over 6 seconds from Massa. Alonso is 4th. Kovalainen is 5th. 6th is Heidfeld. 7th is Glock. And 8th at the moment is David Coulthard. Into the second half of the Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai. You're riding on board with the Ferrari of the reigning world champion Kimi Raikkonen, who is just over 6 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, the race leader, the man who started from pole position. Raikkonen starting from the front row of the grid. Felipe Massa, Hamilton's rival for the championship, is 3rd, almost 15 seconds behind Hamilton at this stage of the game. Alonso is 4th. It's where he started on the grid. In fact, the top 4 are as they were on the grid. Top 5, in fact, with Kovalainen in 6th place. And then it's Heidfeld 6th, Glock 7th, yet to make a stop, and 8th is Robert Kubica, who had a good run from 11th in the opening stint, went quite long on his opening stint, and is now slotted into 8th place, looking for some points here this afternoon.
Yeah, Fisichella not helping the leaders through. Hamilton lost half a second on the previous lap, and I think Raikkonen would have lost more on this lap, getting, but indeed he has, only the 1.4 seconds he lost there, and Hamilton's lead up to 7.5. Fisichella just didn't want to yield until they got on the back straight, and you could see Raikkonen with armfuls of understeer piling the lock on, trying to keep the front gripped up in the turbulent air coming off the back of the Ferrari engine to force India, and that has helped Hamilton along rather nicely. Massa 3rd, 14.6 seconds behind, and his pace is good now.
But you can see this carpet of marbles. It's discarded bits of rubber that mix with dirt and oil and lie off the racing line. They get thrown off the tyres as they go around the corners. You see it in its most extreme form down the long back straight. And the cars get onto that. It's very slippery indeed. Now, Martin, we came into this weekend with so much talk about Lewis Hamilton being overconfident, being arrogant, his driving, etc., being criticised by the other drivers. I'm sure people back home in the UK will have seen a lot of press cuttings about it, some pretty extreme headlines and some extreme language. But what was your take on all of that? It was just a classic bit of sort of wound-up jealousy, if you like, and how do you think he handled it?
In the end, I think he was pretty much, here we go, for the time that Raikkonen lost. He'd already followed that Force India for 3 or 4 laps, 3 or 4 corners as well. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, do that 2 more times and I'll have you off the road. Yeah, so Raikkonen then, that cost him dearly, and he knew it. Meanwhile, Hamilton's done a 36.8. I'm surprised Lewis didn't come back at them a bit and, you know, like, OK, guys, I hope you run into each other then. Thanks very much. But he just took it calmly. And as we've got Toro Rosso and our Red Bull there, Coulthard and Bourdais getting a bit friendly down there between turn 1 and 2. And at the end of the day, Lewis just said, catch me if you can. You do what you want to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm in a good place at the moment. And I think his mind has been in a good place this weekend.
There's Christian Horner of Red Bull looking thoroughly concerned as he looks down the pit lane. But if you were still a Grand Prix driver and you were out there, what would you think about the way Hamilton was driving? Would you be having a go at him?
He has been a bit over-aggressive. He's a bit noisy for them sometimes. The main problem is he's too fast for the others. They don't like it. He's come in, he's getting the job done, he's got probably the best equipment, and there's a bit of jealousy, no doubt about it. I don't think Lewis helps himself sometimes by the way that he expresses himself, but you know, he's getting the job done. That confidence is taking him. He could have and should have won last year's title, his first year. Here he is with a great chance to take this year's title. He really, you know, whatever his mindset is, it's working for him, and that's all that matters.
Well, it looks as though Felipe Massa has been delayed by Giancarlo Fisichella as well in trying to lap him. Out of the pit lane comes the Williams and the Red Bull, the order in which they went in, 11th and 12th. Mark Webber having to take that 10th-place grid drop because of changing an engine. He was light on fuel in the first stint, very aggressive, managed to get his way up into 9th or 10th place, but the middle part of this Grand Prix has been a real toil for him. And as he said to Louise on the grid, it is very, very hard to make any progress when you start 16th on the grid, unless you get a safety car, as Alonso did in Singapore, where he started 15th to 16th on the grid. Let's get some more from Ted.
Yeah, so Red Bull had the option to keep Webber on a 3-stop there or switch him back to a 2. They took the latter. He's on a 2, so he doesn't have to stop again. Mark Webber's teammate David Coulthard also, as we didn't see him earlier, but he stopped on his 1-stop strategy and will now go to the end of the race.
Thank you for that, Ted. In comes Timo Glock, the last of the runners to make their first pit stop. This is lap 33. So he's gone a long way into the Grand Prix. Disappointing qualifying yesterday for Timo Glock, who's been terrific recently. String of good results for him, including 4th place in Singapore, and of course the astonishing 2nd place he drove to in Hungary back in August.
Yeah, Massa lost a second getting past Fisichella. There's the gap then, difficult to read from that camera angle because that straight is so long. And Hamilton, that's how he's ended up 15.8 seconds ahead of Massa, who's in the far distance there. What's happening on this lap? Raikkonen's about a 10th up on Hamilton, but the gap was 8 seconds last time around.
So Hamilton is the full length of this enormous straight here in Shanghai, ahead of his main title rival Felipe Massa, and he can't even see him in his mirrors anymore. 23 laps to go to the finish. The other big talking point this weekend has been behind the scenes, the discussions between the team principals that make up the Formula One Teams Association, newly formed body, regarding how to save costs in the teeth of a global economic slowdown. And something of a bomb was dropped into that a couple of days ago when the FIA president Max Mosley issued a tender to go out to supply engines and drivetrains to Formula One starting in 2010. And, well, Formula One has always been about teams building their own cars and engines as Fisichella gets out of the way of his former teammate, Fernando Alonso.
Okay, mate, we're on it. It's getting very, very tight with Heikki now. Very tight. We need everything you've got, Fernando.
So they're racing against Heikki Kovalainen as they have been from the start of this Grand Prix. Alonso starting 4th, Kovalainen starting 5th. They had a battle on the opening lap. Kovalainen briefly took 4th place away, but then Alonso took it back again. And as the engineer said to Alonso there on the radio, it's getting very tight in this battle of Kovalainen because Kovalainen is matching Alonso's pace at this stage.
Yep, 4 seconds behind him. Sorry, that's Heidfeld's 4 seconds behind Kovalainen. He's 8.4 behind Alonso. Quite why they think it's that tight. We'll find out later in the Grand Prix as Coulthard is fighting there with the Williams of Nakajima, I believe it was. But where's the gaps now? 8.5 seconds ahead now, Hamilton over Raikkonen. And Massa's heading for the line now. Was 15.9 behind. It stays at 15.9 behind. So Massa currently matching Hamilton. If you're wondering how good a job is Lewis Hamilton doing out there today, holding these Ferraris at bay, he's 31.7 seconds ahead of his teammate Kovalainen.
Yeah, driving the same car, always the ultimate test. Kovalainen starting obviously 5th on the grid and having a slightly slow run in the opening stint, losing a lot of lap time. There was some smoke coming out of his brakes in the on the grid, and he seems to have stabilised that situation. That last lap, Hamilton was half a second quicker than Kimi Raikkonen, and now McLaren are getting ready for, we believe, Heikki Kovalainen, who is 5th at the moment. That's a schematic of where they all are. Hamilton, you can see, almost all the way down the straight. Raikkonen chasing after him, and Massa just coming onto the straight as Hamilton drives off it. Kovalainen some way behind, almost half a lap behind his team leader. And the McLaren team are ready for him. Second and final stop of the afternoon then for Kovalainen, who looks set to score 4 World Championship points.
Slowing down.
That's a problem. Yeah, it's a right front puncture. Right front puncture for Heikki Kovalainen. And he's still got some ground to cover here.
Yeah, he's got to go down that long straight. The front tyres then, that'll be Piquet coming up behind him as well for position. The front tyres, of course, carrying none of the load of the rear. They don't have to transmit the power, but still they can flail and start ripping your wing around. So Kovalainen, clear right front puncture, and there's all those marbles, no grip, and off he goes. So just shows you how easily that could happen to anybody. The carcass, they always go on the edge of the sidewalls. He'll get back to the pits, and they sometimes have a problem getting the jack underneath the front wing when the car sits so low. And the pit lane is coming up, and Ted is down in the pits.
This is brake related because we saw that Kovalainen had smoking brakes on the grid, and then in the first stop when they took the wheel off the front right, a massive black dust of carbon just sort of settled on the pit lane. All the guys breathed it in, and so I wonder if it's that actually has overheated the tyre, or maybe he's just picked up some debris. But he comes in very gingerly. He managed to tell the team, oh, that's a right mess, that tyre. They can barely even get the thing off the ground. It doesn't look like they're going to have to change the front wing, although they do put a bit more of a turn on the front wing angle, but he's fueled to the end. And there's some damage to the barge board as well, but not too bad.
Well, he's lost a lot of places. He immediately lost a place to Robert Kubica. That was the car you saw flashing past as he went off the racetrack. So Kubica is now up into 6th place. He lost also a place to Nick Heidfeld, who's up to 5th. And then it's Piquet has also benefited, and Vettel and Glock as well. In comes Fernando Alonso, his second stop of the afternoon from 4th place.
Yeah, Kovalainen out of the picture. Of course, that's very important for the Constructors' title for McLaren. They need those points from Kovalainen. On go the medium tyre, the option as it's called this weekend. It's the softer of the two, therefore the white stripe. They've got to run both types through the race. Alonso electing to use those at the end. Hamilton's lead, meanwhile, is down now to 7.9 seconds. So Raikkonen has been faster through this phase. Massa quite a bit faster. He's now 14.4 behind Hamilton. Hamilton without a great deal of pace right at the moment. Has he backed the engine off to save it for Brazil, or is he beginning to struggle? We haven't seen much of him lately.
No, we haven't. Well, it's a good point you make about the Constructors' Championship, and it looks as though Ferrari are going to score 8 for second place and 6 for third place, which is 14 to add to their total that they have advantage over McLaren. And they're currently 7 points ahead of them. If only Hamilton scores today, they're going to add another 4 points to their margin. So it's pretty comfortable for them, looks like, in the Constructors. But at the moment, let's focus on this pit stop sequence now.
He's gone around.
Reigning world champion Kimi Raikkonen does not pit this time round. Meanwhile, Massa has just set the fastest middle sector of anybody so far. He was the first to pit of the two Ferraris first time round, and he is once again second time round.
Yeah, the fuel flap comes up automatically with the pit lane speed limiter. He gets a nice straight drive in. They were champions last year. They get the best slot in the pit lane. That's the brake dust you can see coming on. Martin Whitmarsh of McLaren there timing his stop. They'll fuel it, of course, just to get it over the line, and some fumes to get him back to Parc Fermé. It's all he needs now. And Hamilton, meanwhile, is back up to 8.9 ahead because Raikkonen just had a poor lap.
Yeah, that last lap of Raikkonen's almost a 1:38. Hamilton has been consistently in the 1:36s. And, well, it's that kind of consistency at speed that makes all the difference we saw with Fernando Alonso in the last couple of Grand Prix. So Hamilton leading by 8.9. Massa rejoins after his stop. Heidfeld is up into third place, is he? Did he pick the place up from him? I think he probably did. And is Raikkonen now beginning to slow down as we get into... Will he now begin to slow down after second stops to give Massa the chance to pick up that second place? That's Webber flying off the racetrack.
On the marbles. And the team are out. Ferrari are out, I can see, and McLaren too. So Raikkonen and Hamilton pitting this lap. Hamilton with a 9-second advantage. The team can... He's got through the pit lane, all right. Be careful of the speed limit. You can get a drive-through for that. And the McLaren team have got a nice, calm, relaxed pit stop. They don't need to rush it. They've got a half a second they can afford to give away easily.
It's all about concentration. Ron Dennis gave the team a stirring speech on Friday saying, just do what you've done so far. It's what got us to this point. Don't focus on this race or obsess about it. The very fact he was making the speech, I suppose, put attention on the thing in the first place. A little bit slow getting the hose off there for the Ferrari refueler, but Raikkonen back in the game.
Yeah, and he's going to get traffic again, but that McLaren, we didn't see the end of the McLaren pit stop, but it sounded absolutely spot on, didn't it? And look at that Raikkonen then just getting out ahead of what must have been Fisichella. They've all lost so much time passing, and of course well clear of Felipe Massa, who he'll start to think about letting past now.
Yep, he will. He's been backing off in the anticipation of that in the run-up to his second stop. You can see how close Massa is to him now compared to before. Nick Heidfeld squeezed through. He's yet to make his second stop of the afternoon in the BMW, and he is in front of Raikkonen on the racetrack. But he'll obviously have to come in again. And I think we're about to see Raikkonen backing off to a large extent, just not to make things too obvious and give Massa that second place so that the championship fight can go on to Brazil. Still 18 laps to go here, separating Hamilton from what would be his 5th victory of the season. As that carpet of marbles grows ever thicker.
But, you know, it'd be so easy just to pick up a puncture, wouldn't it? Like Kovalainen did in the sister car. It's luck of the draw if there's debris on the racetrack. You've got to make sure you stay very much in the wheel tracks. Raikkonen there behind the BMW at the moment, and here comes a visibly closer Felipe Massa. Raikkonen's gone onto the softer tyres, Massa onto the harder tyres. Doesn't really matter, there's not been a lot between them all afternoon, has there? Let's see how Hamilton gets on with them. Massa was flying actually towards the end of that last stint. The sort of pace he had, he pushed hard like that. He will start to see the back of Hamilton towards the final stage of the Grand Prix. But Raikkonen getting ready then for the swap, surely.
In comes Heidfeld. He was briefly in second place. This will drop him back out. We'll see exactly where he rejoins. Hopefully, will we? Maybe we won't. But he's going to be somewhere around just behind Alonso. I think he's going to come back in 6th place. Massa getting ever closer.
Yeah, Lewis can back the motor off now, save it for Brazil. He'll need it. A bit of altitude at Brazil, so the engines don't pump out quite as much power there. I don't know what it all means with the latest electronic. We used to run a 5% fuel cam in a Cosworth there, and but less air, less fuel, less power, less downforce, less drag. But either way, it should be slightly easier on the engine, I would have thought. And Hamilton, though, will love to stay out of the high rev phase. He could probably shift 200 or 300 revs earlier, which is a massive difference when you're up in the stratospheric area of 19,000 RPM.
Yeah, all the engines in Formula 1 rev limited currently. And I was saying before, there's a new proposal from the FIA. They put a tender out for looking for a company that might want to provide engines and drivetrains to Formula 1. A very strong statement from them. They are determined to bring costs down in Formula 1. Whether or not they'll actually go through with it certainly caused some dismay amongst all the teams. They very much see, as I'm sure many people at home do as well, Formula 1 as, yes, it's about drivers and who's the best driver in the world, but it's that technological edge which is important to the sport. It does need to be the pinnacle of Formula 1. And I'm sure that the team principals have been talking together extensively this weekend to come up with a counter-proposal ahead of a meeting this week in Switzerland, in which Max Mosley and the teams will hammer out some ideas for how to save money. Kubica pits from 4th. Decent stop by the BMW team. Where will he rejoin? Behind Vettel, but in front of Glock. So he rejoins in 7th place. Not a bad run from 11th on the grid. What might have been really for him. He can look at his teammate Heidfeld, who's up in 5th place and is 10 seconds behind the Renault of Alonso. And think that he could have picked up a few more points, but it's all a little bit academic really for him. He's not going to be able to win the World Championship.
It'll keep BMW in with a shout of catching certainly McLaren in the title. And though a lot of understeer there from Felipe Massa. He was 2.6 behind Raikkonen, who's 12.3 now behind Hamilton. It's lap 41.
Yeah, and Kovalainen's puncture has dropped him down to 16th place, so it doesn't look like he's going to score any World Championship points at all from this weekend. Hamilton gets the P1 board. He's got 15 more laps to go to the checkered flag. Into the closing stages of the Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai. We enjoyed the Beijing Olympics this summer. A tremendous spectacle that was. This has not been a vintage Grand Prix, but it's been a strong performance from the pole sitter who is leading this race, Lewis Hamilton, by 12.5 seconds. The story can be told fairly briefly on bullet points on the fingers of one hand, really. Hamilton led away early on from pole position from the two Ferraris, drove away from them steadily. Raikkonen stayed in touch, Massa dropped away. Hamilton able to extend his lead after the first round of pit stops. Then Raikkonen came back at him from in second place through the middle of the stint, while Massa again lost ground. Meanwhile, Alonso and Kovalainen battled early on for 4th place before Kovalainen in the second McLaren picked up a puncture on lap 35. That dropped him down into 16th place, and it looks as though Alonso is comfortably 4th for Renault, ahead of the BMW of Nick Heidfeld. Robert Kubica has made good progress in this Grand Prix after a difficult qualifying session. The other man who had a mathematical chance of winning the World Championship. It's escaping away from him now, though. He's 6th at the moment after tough time in qualifying. Fought well through the field to go from 11th to 6th. Glock in the Toyota is in 7th place, having qualified 12th, so he too has made good progress. He was the only one of the men in the points at the moment to have done a one-stop strategy. Everyone else has stopped twice. And Nelson Piquet looks set to pick up another point for Renault in 8th. Sebastian Vettel started 6th, but is now running in 9th. David Coulthard started 15th and is now running 10th. He too only did one stop here this afternoon. Jenson Button has just made his second stop in the Honda. That will drop him back, and he was running 18th, I think, in the early stages. So Kovalainen well out of the points for McLaren. Rosberg well out of the points for Williams. In fact, he's some way back behind his teammate Nakajima. So it looks at this stage of the game as though the championship battles will go on to Brazil in 2 weeks' time. We've yet to see Raikkonen move over and let Massa through. He will do that, which would make that margin a little smaller. It would mean 7 points to Hamilton's advantage. So he could go to Brazil, finish 5th and be world champion, whatever Massa did in the race, even if he was the winner. So Hamilton would just need a 5th place in Brazil. And in the Constructors' Championship, the way it's looking is that Ferrari are going to add another 4 points to their advantage over McLaren, taking it to 11 points. And that would mean 7 points scored for them in Brazil would give them the Constructors' Championship. So that's the way the picture is beginning to shape up. We've still got 12 laps to go here. But you'd have to say that what we saw throughout free practice and again in qualifying, the superiority of the McLaren only in the hands of Hamilton, has to be said, has been borne out in the Grand Prix.
Surprised Ferrari haven't done the switch earlier, really. If the race was put under a safety car now until the end, or red flagged, Massa would get 3rd place points and not 2nd. So they're sort of track with a lot of runoff area, but we have seen safety cars here before. And at the moment, Raikkonen maintaining that 2nd place. He's drifting back towards Massa. They're 13 and 15 seconds respectively behind Lewis Hamilton. But still Raikkonen is the 2nd place man, and actually increased his gap by 0.4 of a second. He's probably like, oh, come on, I'll let you through, but at least cruise up to the back of me.
Absolutely. Well, there's still plenty of little pitfalls waiting for the unwary. Concentration levels must be maintained at the highest standard, because we've got a carpet of small balls of rubber that Mark Webber flew off the road, very, very slippery, on just a few laps ago. And we saw Heikki Kovalainen picking up a puncture from some debris on the track. So there's still plenty of things to slip up on in these remaining 11 laps, separating Hamilton from a step closer to a first world title at the age of 23. Riding on board with Felipe Massa.
Not had a great day, Massa, has he? Solid, but not spectacular. It's lap 46. Raikkonen 13.4 behind Hamilton. Massa 2.4 behind him in a current 3rd place. They're well clear of Alonso by a dozen seconds, who's running 4th at the moment.
Closing stages of the Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai, a race which has been as undramatic as Fuji last weekend was dramatic. From pole, Lewis Hamilton driving away from the Ferraris. He's dominated the weekend, really. Raikkonen currently is 2nd, Massa currently is 3rd, but they're getting ready to do the switch so that Massa can pick up the extra 2 points for 2nd place to keep his hopes alive of winning his first world title on his home circuit, Sao Paulo, Brazil. In 2 weeks' time, he would go there with a 7-point deficit to Lewis Hamilton if things stayed as they would be once he's made the switch. We're on board with Kovalainen, who was looked set for 5th place, having been beaten to 4th by Fernando Alonso's Renault, but then a puncture intervened, and Kovalainen looks set to score no points here. That's going to give quite an advantage to Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship going into the final race. They look pretty comfortable favourites to pick that up in Brazil. There is Lewis Hamilton. He's leading by 15 seconds from Raikkonen. Massa is 3rd, Alonso 4th, Heidfeld 5th. The only real action is he's being caught by his teammate Robert Kubica, who started 11th. Kubica catching Heidfeld about 4 or 5 tenths of a second a lap. Glock is 7th, Piquet the last of the points positions in 8th, and it's Vettel 9th, Coulthard 10th, as a rather resigned looking Stefano Domenicali just makes a radio communication.
So where are they going to do the swap? It needs to be the back straight where there's least marbles, or the front pit straight here. And they'll be wanting to do it soon. They'll be using words, code words, or just reminders. And Massa just hasn't had a lot of pace on those harder tyres. He preferred the softer tyres for the first 2 stints, the main part of the Grand Prix. And Raikkonen's been backing out and backing out, and Massa's barely catching him. And Ted is in the pits with news on Ferrari.
Yeah, just popped in there. I said to the guys, you know, are they going to make the swap? He kind of shrugged. They are. It looks like they're about to do it. But he's also said that they've just backed off completely. And it's the real feeling down here is that the championship's not over. There's still one more race to go. They might be able to do something.
Yeah, the switch takes place then. Kimi Raikkonen knew what he had to do. He repays the compliment paid to him 12 months ago in Brazil when Massa dominated the Brazilian Grand Prix before eventually handing over the race victory to Felipe Massa. There's Rob Smedley, the engineer of Felipe Massa, and the Massa family camp. They know the pressure that's going to be on their shoulders when they arrive in Brazil for the final round. It's been a long time since a Brazilian driver was in contention for the World Championship, particularly in Brazil, because most of the times when it was in the past, Brazil was one of the first races in the championship, not the last. Here's another look at perhaps the most predictable pass of the 2008 championship. And it's an interesting point, actually, Martin. Someone said to me in the press office this morning, only once in the whole history of this sport has a driver actually clinched a world title at his home Grand Prix. And that was way back at the beginning of Formula One when Farina, the Italian driver, won in 1950 at Monza. Because a lot of the nations that have won world championships either don't have a Grand Prix or the Grand Prix happens earlier on in the season. It's if you think about it, it's been tended to be Japan, Australia that's finished off the championship in recent times. So Massa goes there with a unique opportunity, albeit likely now with a 7-point deficit. 7 laps to go to the finish.
Rosberg and Kovalainen making what is referred to as a splash and dash. Clearly didn't get enough fuel in when he came in with that puncture. So that'll put him at the back of the field, basically. We've got 18 runners at the moment. Now he'll come out just ahead of Fisichella. He'll remain 18th, and he's going to park it. And, well, unless that's got a clearly identifiable mechanical problem, they'll not be getting a fresh engine. They've got to show that they've got a problem before they get a fresh engine for the following Grand Prix, but clearly was not going to get any points today.
So I guess they decided to save the final 6 racing laps on the engine and take it forward to next Grand Prix. I don't know, but
well, maybe there's a problem in there, and they'll get a fresh motor.
Well, let's see.
Yeah, no, I'm at the back of the McLaren garage. It's the brakes. All the attention going on the brakes, and right front, the one that's been trouble all that time. In fact, the mechanics can't even touch it. It's so hot. And the bloke from Carbon Industry who do the pads and the calipers is standing right next to me with a very worried look on his face. So it looks like brake failure. It just became undrivable for Kovalainen.
Yes, what happens when they get too hot, the wear rate just accelerates exponentially, and we saw, of course, Kovalainen on the grid, that right front brake smoking like crazy. They obviously, for whatever reason, got too hot on the warm-up lap.
Well, it's interesting now because his pace was all right. I mean, he was lapping same sort of sector times as everybody else. They did obviously get too hot on the warm-up lap. He has had problems with it in the past. Remember Hamilton in Monza in qualifying was saying that the reason why he had difficulties and didn't make the top 10 was because his brakes glazed, and it turns out that that's something that's happened to Kovalainen on quite a few occasions throughout this season. So Kovalainen and brakes are clearly an area that need a bit of work, but as I say, it certainly wasn't harming his pace too much, so it's interesting he's decided to call it a day simply for the reason of brakes. On board with the sole remaining Toyota, Timo Glock, who has driven himself from a disappointing 12th on the grid up into 7th and another 2 World Championship points. He should appear on a few people's top 10 drivers of the year list as he gets his hand off the steering wheel. He's not very happy about the Force India in front of him of Giancarlo Fisichella, which finally gets out of his way.
Yeah, he's about as popular as a toothache today, Fisichella. He's been in everybody's way. Now one of the, well, the most experienced man in the field, really.
Fernando Raikkonen's just done a 40.9. He's just done a 40.9. He's 7.3 seconds ahead. Maybe he has a problem.
That's old news.
Yeah, it is delayed transmission. Clearly the 40.9 was when he allowed Massa to go past because he's back down in the 38.6. Alonso 6.1 seconds behind Raikkonen, but Raikkonen could up his pace if he had to. I'm pretty sure of that.
Mind you, on that last lap, Alonso was again 1.2 seconds quicker than him, so we do need to keep a little bit of an eye on it because he's on this lap. he is already 0.7 of a second quicker than Raikkonen again. So possibly Raikkonen just easing off and just managing the gap. 5 laps to go to the finish and 6 seconds separating these two. And you can see that Raikkonen has backed the engine off a little bit. He's not using the full 19,000 RPM.
Yeah, you can't get to 19 in top, otherwise you hit the soft limiter and you can blow the motors out. But it's what they use in between the shifts, and you're right, about 18.7. But this is the second race on their engines anyway, isn't it? They'll get a fresh one for Brazil, maybe just coaxing it across the line. He's done a 37.8 now. Alonso's done a 36.8, and the gap down to 5.1. So Kimi Raikkonen is going to be fed up having to yield. So his teammate is going to have to get back on the programme.
Yeah, not terribly motivated to do that, but he found the way. It's been a rather scrappy season for Kimi Raikkonen. Tremendous pace at times, and in fact, looking through the season, he had if you take 4 race blocks of Grand Prix, around the time between Malaysia and Turkey, he put together a point sequence of about 36 points, which is the best anybody's done in a 4-run sequence. So it was there, the underlying speed. He's got, is it 10 or 11 fastest laps this year? The real difficulty came throughout the summer with qualifying. Just couldn't get the car going the way he wanted it in qualifying, which meant he started further back on the grid and couldn't really impose himself during the Grand Prix. And all of that allowed his teammate Massa to become the point man for Ferrari and the contender for the championship. So I'm told by Ferrari sources that the winter program for Raikkonen has him doing 9,000 kilometers of testing. It's around 30 Grand Prix distances to iron out any problems he may have, to get fully up to speed with the new technologies on the 2009 cars, including the KERS system, the energy recovery system, and the slick tyres, and the new aerodynamics of these cars. And hopefully it'll be a stronger, more resilient and more highly motivated Raikkonen who comes back after the winter to attack for the 2009 World Championship.
Alonso then has got a sniff of the 2 Ferraris. You can see them heading down there into turn 1 as he comes onto the pit straight, giving everything, bouncing across the curbs. Fernando Alonso has just done his fastest lap of the race so far, and the gap down to 4.3 seconds. He's going for it and really quite got enough time, but Raikkonen can only cruise up to the gearbox of Massa, and that's 3.4 seconds ahead of him.
Well, Ferrari have had 7 wins this season, McLaren 5 up to this point. And as I said before, Raikkonen's had plenty of fastest laps. Massa has had plenty of pole positions. The feeling is very much that the Ferrari was a championship-winning car, or is a championship-winning car, and I wonder whether the drivers have got the maximum out of it. Massa, of course, has been very unlucky with engine failures in Australia and Hungary, and obviously the refueling disaster in Singapore. Without that, he would be probably home and hosed in this championship, but those difficulties have allowed Hamilton to keep a shout, and it looks as though he's now just going to be a couple of laps away from a victory that would take him to Brazil with a real chance of clinching the World Championship.
Yeah, Hamilton's coming up behind quite a fight, which I think is Nakajima, Bourdais and Webber, the next 3 to be lapped. And I suspect that radio call was, don't get involved, just hang back now. Don't catch that back up, you don't need to be there.
Yeah, he's got a 16-second advantage. He does seem to have backed off a little bit, Lewis Hamilton, so as not to get involved in that scrap. And, well, it's not often that Hamilton sets a fastest lap. He hasn't done it too many times in his career, but he's done it today, a 1:36.325, which is 2.3 seconds quicker than he's lapping at the moment. And it just underlines the dominance of the weekend for Lewis Hamilton. He was quickest in the practice sessions on Friday. He was second quickest to Heidfeld on Saturday morning. He was fastest in all 3 segments of qualifying, and he's a couple of laps away from victory. So almost a clean sweep of the weekend in terms of being top of the timesheets for Lewis Hamilton.
It's interesting, really, isn't it? 33 starts, 34 with this one. Only 2 fastest laps in his career in Formula 1, despite so many victories already. He's had 21 podiums and 12 victories, and so few fastest laps. So he must be consistent rather than blisteringly quick, which of course he is in qualifying.
I should analyse that and get to the bottom of why that happens. I think it says a lot as well about the pace, the raw pace of the Ferrari. And that's what I was saying before about there's a feeling within certain sectors at Ferrari that they've been a bit driver limited this year. They've got a car that was more than capable of winning the world title. Not saying that they're not going to, of course. Still 7 points separating Hamilton and Massa going into the last Grand Prix. It could easily turn around, as it did in Brazil last year, in Ferrari's favour. But nevertheless. On to the last lap then for Hamilton. Massa second, Raikkonen third, Alonso fourth, Heidfeld fifth, sixth is Kubica. BMW going to take some good points home today. Glock is seventh, Piquet the last of the points positions at the moment. Vettel's ninth, David Coulthard is 10th, Barrichello is 11th. It's been a good day, in fact a good weekend for Rubens Barrichello. His teammate Jenson Button's down in 16th, and well, he's done very well. Barrichello's really staking his claim to stay at Honda for next year. Nakajima's 12th, Bourdais is 13th, Webber is 14th, having been as high as 9th in the opening stint. Rosberg is 15th, Button 16th, Fisichella 17th, and last, well, having just, of course, retired, is Heikki Kovalainen. Three retirements, Kovalainen, Sutil and Trulli.
Some talk of Bruno Senna testing for Honda. He's got a chance there, presumably, of a race seat next year. There's a lot of young drivers in GP2 who are going to fancy a go at that.
There's a lovely guy, Bruno Senna. Interesting to see how he gets on in the test. Was strong in the GP2 this season. And we'll see how outright quick he is when he does that test. Into the final few corners then for Lewis Hamilton, who has completely dominated this Chinese Grand Prix weekend. He's not going to take the World Championship home today, but he's going to take a big step closer to it. He's got a 7-point margin going into the final round. Lewis Hamilton wins the Chinese Grand Prix, his 5th victory of 2008, the 9th of his young career. And here comes Felipe Massa, gifted the 2nd place by his teammate. He will take the title fight on to Brazil, and that will be quite some spectacle. Raikkonen finishes 3rd, Alonso 4th.
5 different victors then of the 5 Chinese Grand Prix so far. Lewis Hamilton with a supreme race there. We've had some thrilling races this year. This wasn't one of them. Hamilton won't care a bit, will he? That was a beautiful drive.
Let's think a little bit about the driver of the day. Lewis Hamilton, of course, had it all taken care of pretty much since the moment he got out of his hire car on Thursday afternoon. But who's your driver of the day?
I was thinking Fisichella. He starred quite a lot, hasn't he, at the back there? No, Hamilton, easy, isn't it? I mean, that was the perfect start, the perfect opening lap. Haven't seen him put a wheel wrong.
Tremendous, Lewis. Fantastic race. Lots of discipline. This is what we have to carry into Brazil. Let's keep the discipline going.
Absolutely fantastic job, Lewis. Fastest all weekend, pole position, race winner, fastest lap. Okay, standard in-lap procedures, yellow G7, and pick up debris.
That was cool, guys. Fantastic job all weekend, as always. And the car was just a dream to drive. So let's move on. And hopefully we have a good weekend in Brazil. Thanks, guys.
Sounds like a man making a phone call rather than someone who's just driven 56 racing laps. No woohoos today then for Lewis Hamilton. It's all about calm, and that buzzword Ron Dennis just used, discipline. That's what Hamilton had today. He's taken the 10 points in China. The discipline that was missing last weekend in Japan, very much in evidence here this weekend in Shanghai. Lewis Hamilton has dominated the weekend. Pole position, victory, and fastest lap. His mother and his stepmother congratulate him, along with his brother Nicholas. Herbie Blash there from the FIA. An ecstatic Lewis Hamilton goes to get weighed. It's not been a classic Grand Prix by any stretch of the imagination, but it means we're on for a fantastic showdown in Brazil in 2 weeks' time. Felipe Massa's face, I think, says it all. Ferrari simply not quick enough today.
Yeah, Massa, chin on the deck a bit. Hamilton, more restrained than normal. Definitely a new approach from him.
Not a moment too soon, I think his fans would probably say, having watched him in Japan last week. That's the situation that we take to Brazil in a couple of weeks' time, where last year the dreams shattered for Hamilton. Can he finish the job at the second time of asking? Still the opportunity to become the youngest ever Formula One world champion. He has a 7-point margin over Massa. Raikkonen there, who allowed Massa through to pick up the extra 2 points. For most of the Grand Prix, it was Hamilton, Raikkonen, Massa, the front three. And in the closing stages, Raikkonen let his teammate through.
BMW 5th and 6th, Heidfeld, Kubica. Kubica out of the World Championship then, but at least BMW stay within 10 points of McLaren, who are 9 now behind Ferrari. So Ferrari looking good for the constructors, but this man looking solid for the world title.
Yeah, it means he can go to Brazil in 2 weeks' time, and if he finishes, I believe, 5th or better, he's world champion. His 5th Grand Prix victory of the season, equaling Felipe Massa's total. They've been very closely matched throughout the year. And Hamilton gets another pot, the 9th of his Formula One career, not even yet completing his 2nd season in the sport. Yep.
Well, nothing fell off his car, but a bit fell off his trophy. Dave Ryan there, a stalwart of the McLaren team. Von, as we call him, top man. And good to see him up there collecting the winner's trophy for McLaren.
And, well, he doesn't really hide his emotions all that brilliantly, Felipe Massa. When he's happy, you can tell. When he is down, you can tell. He looked pretty dejected yesterday after qualifying 3rd. He doesn't look particularly happy today after finishing 15 seconds behind. Ever the encouraging mother, though, down below. The wife not quite so keen
Still
on the result.
Lovely bloke, Felipe Massa. A man you'd have to dinner or want to sit beside on an aeroplane, that's for sure. Raikkonen, what could he do? He wasn't quick enough to beat Hamilton, so he had to give up to Felipe Massa.
So it's a dominant win for McLaren and Hamilton, and we move on then to the finale in Brazil in 2 weeks' time. It is all set up perfectly there. Last year it went completely wrong for Hamilton. He goes there this time knowing finish 5th and you are world champion.
And sometimes in Formula One you really don't mind a processional race, and that was certainly the case for Lewis Hamilton today. All the way through this weekend he could have done nothing more, and really, in all honesty, in terms of the championship, he could have expected no more. But Marquis takes that 7-point championship lead to the final round in Brazil, which is exactly the same as the position he was in last year. Extraordinary how things turn out.
Yeah, fantastic race for him. Everything went according to plan, and that's what we wanted, and that's what he wanted. But he now knows that he goes into the last race, still a little bit of pressure in the system. If one thing does go wrong, it puts him out of it completely. But I think the way that Lewis Hamilton's driving now, I don't think anything can go wrong.
Such calmness, such control today. It begs the question, why on earth couldn't he have done this last weekend?
100% correct. If you see the Lewis Hamilton of today's race, if that would have been last weekend in Japan, everything would have been done and dusted. But there you go, that's experience, and I think today's proven that he's learned.
Hamilton's victory in the Chinese Grand Prix. We'll get all the analysis and all the reaction and maybe a few thoughts on what lies ahead in 2 weeks' time in Sao Paulo in just a couple of minutes' time. Lewis Hamilton's victory in China, and he takes a 7-point lead into the final round of this World Championship in Brazil in 2 weeks' time. And he's come through a huge examination this weekend, and so too has his family and his McLaren team as well. But Ferrari filling the next 2 positions through Massa and Raikkonen. So while the champagne is flowing for Lewis Hamilton, maybe the constructors' title is slipping away from McLaren. But they don't mind. It's been Hamilton's day in Shanghai. And this is the championship table we take into that final round. And Lewis Hamilton, the full race victory from start to finish to take the maximum 10 points and take that 7-point lead into Sao Paulo. Felipe Massa allowed pass by Kimi Räikkönen to collect the extra 2 points for second. So Hamilton, Massa, Räikkönen, then another great drive from Fernando Alonso. Nick Heidfeld in 5th. Robert Kubica said goodbye to his championship hopes with a 6th place finish from 11th on the grid. Timo Glock and Nelson Piquet completed the point scorers today. And this is the championship table, that 7-point lead for Lewis Hamilton. The 2008 Drivers' Championship lies between two men, Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa. McLaren against Ferrari, exactly the same situation as we had in Sao Paulo a year ago, but will it be Lewis this time? Before we get Mark's views once again, let's hear the views of the race winner in the press conference.
Well, Lewis, on a day when Ferrari had a very strong result, you were on the pole, you had to go out there and win the race, and it looked as if everything went perfectly for you.
Yeah, all weekend we've had God on our side, and as always, and the team have done a phenomenal job, really preparing the car, making steps forward. I came here and the car felt fantastic all weekend, and you know, I owe so much to the guys, not just at the track but back home. So they've done a phenomenal job, and the car is really a dream to drive. And for the guys here, you know, they just make sure that the car stays intact, and so I can bring it home, and that's what we did. So it was a fantastic team effort this weekend, and so a big thanks to them.
Although McLaren led every lap of the race and you led from the start, it would be easy to say it was an easy win for you, Lewis, but there was enormous pressure, particularly at the start, going into the first corner. Let's talk about that, and then pulling out that little bit of lead over Kimi.
Well, it was quite straightforward, actually. I managed to get everything right on the formation lap, perfectly in my position on the start, and a great start. It was really probably one of the best we've had, or it felt one of the best we've had this year, which was needed. And so I got into turn one quite clear. I took it easy the first few corners, and then I started to bridge the gap. And fortunately, we just were very, very consistent. I think every lap was faster, and very, very few errors throughout the whole run. And therefore, I was able to create a gap, and from there, it was pretty smooth sailing.
It's said that in that situation, sometimes it's difficult to keep the concentration level and to stop the mind wandering. Let's talk about the last few laps of the race when you had something like a 15-second lead and victory was in sight.
Yeah, well, from after my second pit stop, it was we were pretty much cruising. We were just looking after the tyres and looking after the engine and just trying to bring the car home. You know, I knew there was an even bigger gap behind me. It was inevitable. Kimi would let Felipe by, and so I just had to just keep it under control. And to be honest, it wasn't tough at all. I think just when you're out in front and you have that gap and you know you can push a little bit more if you need to, it is quite comforting. So it's just about just keeping your head and staying calm.
Congratulations to you. We'll come back to you for some further thoughts in a second. And Felipe, well done. Second place. Looked like a great race between you and Kimi in the closing stages. Talk about that. Well, first of all, let's talk about the early phase of the race from your point of view.
Well, we took the decision to start on the soft tires, and we knew already that most of the people will start on the hard, because you know our car work a little bit in a different way compared to the other cars, especially compared to McLaren's. And for us, the hard was was no grip, difficult to drive, and the soft was the only option for the first and the second stint. So we decided to start on the soft. I think it was the right decision for us. And on the start, I didn't have a good start. I had a little bit of wheel spin, but even though it was not a very, very high grip on our side, and then we just stayed in the same positions. So we saw that Lewis was a bit stronger in the beginning of the race. I mean, he was stronger during the whole race, but in the beginning he just starts to pulling away, maybe 2-3 tenths sometimes per lap, and then make for sure his race much more comfortable, you know. And for us, we were completely driving really on the limit, trying to reduce the gap, but it was not possible. I mean, I was trying to push as Kimi was trying to push to get closer to Lewis, but it was not possible. So today, unfortunately, Lewis had a better car for the whole weekend.
And the pass of Kimi towards the end and catching Kimi?
Well, I was quite. It was the best time for me on the race. I was quite strong, and then I catch him and I pass him. So that was the good part of the race. But anyway, it was not enough because we're fighting with McLarens, and today at least one was in front, but we could manage to finish second and third. I think for the drivers' championship was not fantastic, but for the construction, I think it was very good. So it's always very important to fight for the construction. I think today we did a good job thinking on the construction championship. I try on the drivers' championship, but it was not possible today.
Thank you, Felipe. Kimi, Lewis just said that it was inevitable that Felipe would eventually finish second. If you can just talk us through the last phase of the race.
I mean, we know what we want as a team, and that's what we did. So I mean, it's normal in these situations. I mean, today I had a very good car all the time. No major issues. The car was handling quite nicely, but unfortunately, it wasn't fast enough on the moments when we needed. And when on the start, Lewis pulled away a bit, and then I started to be able to do same lap times, a little bit catching. But I mean, every time when I was faster, it was too late, and the gap stayed then same. And in the second stop, I was catching him a bit, but then I had traffic 3 times, and it cost me a lot of time. So, I mean, if even being behind him, right behind him, we were stopping on the same lap. So, without any mistakes, there's no way to get past. So, unfortunately, we were second and third today. Was the best what we could do. But hopefully, next race we can challenge them a bit more. And I mean, once we came here on Friday, especially Lewis seems to be very, very quick. So it was not easy, but we gave the best, but it didn't work out this time.
It is difficult for teams these days, team orders not being allowed to influence the result of a race. So how did you handle that from your point of view?
Like I said, I know what the team expects and what we want the overall results. So I mean, it's racing, and I have nothing to lose or win in a way. I'm driving for the team, so I mean, it's a normal situation, and I was pretty happy how things went in the race. Apart from we couldn't challenge the McLaren today, but apart from that, the car wasn't too bad. But like I said, just didn't have the little bit more speed what we needed.
Thank you, Kimi. And Lewis, returning to you. 7 points. 7 points was your lead going into Brazil last year, I think. 7 points is your lead going into Brazil in 2008. I'm sure everyone wants to know what this win means for you and how this now sets up the Brazilian Grand Prix for you.
Well, this is another step towards the championship and towards my dream and towards my team's dream. You know, it's the team deserve it. We've worked very, very hard throughout the season, and I think our approach to this race was right. You know, it wasn't to go out and win everything just in this race. Was to look at both races and try to score as many points collectively. And I know going into Brazil will be a much different situation compared to last year. And I know we'll be a lot more, even more competitive than we are here. So that's comforting, and also we know we've got to do a good job, but it will be tough. These two will for sure be pushing us hard, but I hope as a team we can pull through and yeah.
That dream is now agonisingly close for Lewis Hamilton, isn't it?
It's very close indeed, but it's still not quite there, and that's the worry that we're all going to have at the moment. Just seeing what goes into the next race in Brazil, because it could be all over come the first turn. But that certainly wasn't the case today, was it?
Winning, though, is never easy, as Lewis said in there, but this was about as straightforward a victory as he could ever hope for. The only moment of doubt in our minds was that start after what happened in Japan last weekend, but this time he got it absolutely right.
I have to say, I thought it'd be a lot stronger performance from the Ferraris. Both the Ferraris actually getting off the start line, but textbook stuff by Lewis Hamilton. Got the grip when he needed it, fired off into the lead. And Kovalainen was the only guy who made a little bit of impact, just getting by Alonso there and trying to make an impression on the Ferrari of Massa. But he didn't quite get enough done. A couple of guys truly there getting caught up with Bourdais. But really for Lewis, just a copybook start, what he would expect to do every time from here on in if he can.
Heikki Kovalainen through there looked as if he might have a big part to play, but there was some brake damage there or something for Heikki.
I mean, you know, we've talked about Heikki Kovalainen and we've gone throughout the season. We've seen him put in some good performances, but when it counts during a race, he's a little bit adrift to Lewis Hamilton. And unfortunately, you look at the lap times today, at some times in some laps, he was a second slower than Lewis. That's not what McLaren need for the constructors, and it's not what Lewis needs to try and win the world title.
But Lewis, I mean, to his credit, gave the impression that he was holding back. Any moments of doubt at all from the start through to his run through to the finish?
Well, I think there was a couple of times when he was pushing extremely hard, and you can just see Lewis Hamilton here, just gets the rear of the car out, slides it around. You know, at this point, we all felt maybe the tyres a little bit adrift, but no, it's not that. It's actually him pushing as hard as he can, just getting that performance out of the car and out of the tyres. And his lap time, very strong, lap after lap after lap. A couple of times the Ferrari was a little bit quicker, but very, very rarely.
And a significant pace advantage over the Ferraris, although Kimi didn't have much luck in trying to get past the likes of Fisichella.
Well, he didn't have a lot of luck, no, but saying that, Lewis Hamilton had already gone by Fisichella before Raikkonen came up on him, and to be very honest with you, I don't think this would have made much difference whatsoever in the race. You know, there's a little gesture from Raikkonen, but he probably lost about a second and a half only.
It was never in any doubt that Kimi was going to surrender that second place to Felipe Massa, but there was a certain amount of embarrassment about it in that press conference, it seemed.
I mean, you know, just look at it. It just waters up behind him. It's very easily done. There's, you know, a huge differential in speed here. And for me, at the end of the day, the telling tale is when these guys had made the change on the racetrack, Raikkonen then went back on after this to start putting in very strong laps again. So there was nothing wrong with his car. We can't hear that. We don't want to hear that. We can just see a change position for the team points.
And although team orders are meant to be illegal, McLaren will have no complaints about that. Heikki Kovalainen might be required to do the same thing in Sao Paulo. But what actually is the protocol between drivers to organise something like that?
Well, they must have some kind of instruction or some understanding before they go into the race. But saying that, you know, it's a big if, and we'll have to wait and see whether that does come into play in Brazil. I hope not.
OK, we might learn more from Felipe Massa's race engineer, Rob Smedley. We can hear from him now.
Well, Rob, what was the story of Ferrari and Felipe's race today?
Oh, it wasn't too bad, but you know, we were just a little bit outclassed by McLaren and Lewis especially. You know, I mean, I take my hat off to the kid. He's done a great job. He's driven a really, really good race, no mistakes, and he's won the race by like 16 seconds or something.
Ferrari was the fastest car though in Singapore and Japan. What happened here?
Well, you know, I mean, you come to different tracks, you have different surface, different tyre temperatures, you know, different downforce requirements from the cars, and it can swap. I mean, as we've seen many, many times this year, it can swap. But, you know, you also have to put it down, is the McLaren the fastest car, or is Lewis just the quickest driver? Because if you look at him compared to poor old Heikki, you know, he completely outclassed him this weekend.
Is it over for you?
No, not at all. It's never over till it's over, you know what I mean? I'm a North of England boy, and I'll keep pushing right till the end, as will all the lads on the car and Felipe. You know, it's not over till it's over.
Thanks, Rob.
And certainly the Constructors' Championship isn't over for Ferrari. They're in a very strong position to retain the title they won last year. But for Lewis Hamilton, he will settle for the Drivers' Championship. Ferrari may well take the Constructors in Sao Paulo in 2 weeks' time. But Mark, a final word. How do you see the task for Lewis in Brazil? As you say, it is still in the balance.
Well, I've been thinking about it, Steve. You come to China, you can pretty much buy a copy of everything in this country. I think Lewis can afford to have the real thing, but I think he'd be very happy with a copybook performance of today. If he does what he done today in Brazil, it's done and dusted.
Felipe Massa last year was inspired in front of his home crowd. What might be the effect on Felipe of going there with so much pressure and expectation this time?
A lot of pressure on his shoulders, but a big lift from the home crowd. Very passionate, the Brazilians, about their motor racing. And Massa will go in there feeling strong, but I don't think it's going to be enough.
And he and Kimi Raikkonen will work as a partnership again. So perhaps in a way we ought to assume race victory for Felipe.
Well, we'll see something from Ferrari, I'm sure of that. And we know that they'll be going there feeling confident to a point. But I think Lewis Hamilton in today's mode is unstoppable.
And Heikki Kovalainen, from the McLaren point of view, it'd be wonderful if he could just raise his game a little for Brazil.
I'd like to see that, just so he goes out at the end of the season on a strong performance. He's got a whole season next year to make sure he does something different and lines up with Lewis.
OK, Mark, thanks very much indeed. A wonderful performance from Lewis Hamilton today. Victory in China, and all our hopes are sky high for what he might achieve in Brazil in 2 weeks' time. We will, of course, have live coverage in a fortnight's time, but we've got more to come from here in China today. A full race rerun of this Chinese Grand Prix with further reaction to what we've seen at 2:55, with highlights also later tonight as well. Football highlights from the championship immediately follows us now on ITV1. And we've got more football on Tuesday, back to the Champions League on ITV1. We're at Old Trafford for the big game between Manchester United and Celtic. ITV4 will have live coverage of Arsenal at Fenerbahce. But then Brazil in 2 weeks. Late afternoon coverage of qualifying on Saturday, 3:10, and the race build-up on Sunday afternoon from 4. It's nearly there for Lewis Hamilton. Can he make sure in Sao Paulo?